The sound of the plane landing at San Francisco International Airport woke Camille Harrington from her troubled sleep. She blinked, disoriented for a moment, her designer sunglasses askew on her face. The memory of the last 48 hours hit her like a wave. Her business pitch crashing and burning in front of her father's investors, followed by Bradley's cold dismissal of their 2-year relationship. "It's not working, Camille," he had said over dinner at the 5-star restaurant, where he'd first proposed they move in together. "I need someone who understands what it takes to succeed in this world." Camille gathered her carry-on luggage, a Louis Vuitton bag her father had given her for Christmas, and joined the stream of passengers exiting the plane. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and dark circles shadowed her eyes despite her expensive concealer. At 25, she looked every bit the New York socialite turned Silicon Valley entrepreneur, but the confident facade was crumbling. Outside the terminal, the cool San Francisco air hit her face. Camille pulled out her phone and opened the Uber app, barely looking at the screen as she requested a ride to the Four Seasons. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "Don't embarrass me again, Camille. The Harrington name means something in this town." When the black town car pulled up to the curb, Camille slid into the back seat without looking up, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Good evening. Going to the Four Seasons downtown?" The driver's voice was deep and smooth, like honey poured over gravel. "Yes," Camille answered, still staring at her phone, scrolling through the barrage of texts from her friends back east, all wanting details about her exciting Silicon Valley adventure. None of them knew about the disaster. The car pulled away from the curbie and merged into traffic. Camille tried to focus on composing a message to her assistant, but the words blurred on the screen. She hadn't slept properly in days. "Would you like some water?" the driver asked, gesturing to a small cooler on the passenger seat. "They're still and sparkling." Camille finally looked up, meeting the driver's eyes in the rearview mirror. They were warm and deep brown, set in a handsome face with a neatly trimmed beard. His expression was kind but not intrusive. "Sparkling, please," she said, surprised by the thoughtful gesture. He handed her a chilled bottle, their fingers brushing briefly. "I'm Miles, by the way. Miles Thorne." "Camille," she replied automatically, then caught herself. Normally, she didn't chat with drivers. Miles nodded, turning his attention back to the road. He didn't push for conversation, and Camille appreciated the silence. She took a long sip of water and stared out the window at the city lights. The quiet in the car felt different than the strained silence she'd endured on the plane. It was peaceful. Miles drove with a calm confidence, his hands steady on the wheel. There was something about his presence that made the chaos in her mind settle, if only slightly. After a few minutes, Miles spoke again. "Rough day?" The simple question, asked without expectation or judgment, caught Camille off guard. She met his eyes in the mirror again. "Rough week, actually," she admitted, surprised by her own honesty. Miles nodded. "Those happen." "Do they happen to you?" Camille asked, genuinely curious. A small smile touched his lips. "More often than I'd like. But the good thing about rough days is they eventually end." "Unless they don't," Camille murmured, looking back out the window. "Unless they just keep piling up until you can't see past them anymore." Miles was quiet for a moment. "Sounds like more than just a rough day." Something about his voice, the warmth, the lack of judgment, cracked something inside Camille. Words she hadn't shared with anyone began to spill out. "I came here to pitch a business idea to my father's investors, a platform to connect small sustainable farms with restaurants. I've been working on it for 2 years." She took a deep breath. "They tore it apart, said it wasn't scalable, Enuga. My father just sat there, watching me crash and burn." Miles nodded, listening. "Then my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, decided that was the perfect time to tell me I'm not serious enough about my future." Camille laughed, a brittle sound. "All this after I moved across the country for him, left my friends, my whole life." "That's a lot to handle at once," Miles said simply. "It is," Camille agreed, surprised by how good it felt to say it out loud. "I don't even know why I'm telling you this." "Sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger," Miles replied. "No history, no judgment." Camille nodded, feeling a weight lift slightly from her shoulders. "When I was younger, before all this pressure and expectations, I used to have this place I would go, near the ocean, just north of the city. My mum would take me there when we visited my grandparents. Her voice took on a dreamlike quality. The sound of the waves, the smell of the salt water, it used to fix me somehow. I don't even know where I lost it. Miles was quiet, focused on driving, but Camille could tell he was listening. "Sorry," she said suddenly, embarrassed by her outburst. "You didn't ask for my life story." "No need to apologize," Miles said. "Sometimes we all need to let things out." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights gliding past. Camille felt her eyes growing heavy, lulled by the smooth motion of the car and Miles's calming presence. She was almost dozing when she felt the car slow and turn. Opening her eyes, Camille realized they were no longer heading toward downtown. The buildings had given way to a winding coastal road. "I think we made a wrong turn," she said, sitting up straighter. "The hotel is downtown." Miles glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "We're not going to your hotel yet." For a brief moment, alarm flashed through Camille, but something in Miles's steady gaze reassured her. "This isn't my hotel," she said, as the car pulled into a small parking area overlooking the ocean. "No," Miles replied calmly, turning off the engine. "You needed the ocean." Camille stared out the window. There it was, a cliffside overlook just outside the city. Waves crashing against the rocks below, mist rising in the moonlight. The same stretch of coastline she had described, the place she once loved. "How did you—" she began, her voice catching. "I grew up around here," Miles said simply. "The way you described it, I thought you might need this more than another night in a hotel room." Camille opened the car door, drawn to the sight before her. The night air was cool against her skin as she stepped out, the sound of the waves immediately enveloping her. She walked toward the railing, her chest tight with emotion. Miles got out too, but stayed by the car, giving her space. Camille gripped the metal railing, feeling the salt spray on her face. And then, without warning, tears came. Not the controlled, dignified tears she had allowed herself in the hotel bathroom in New York, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere long buried. She cried for her failed business pitch, for Bradley's rejection, for her father's disappointment. But mostly, she cried. And for the girl who had once stood in this very spot, full of dreams and possibilities, before the weight of expectations had crushed her spirit. After a few minutes, the intensity of her emotions subsided, leaving her feeling strangely lighter. She became aware of Miles's presence, still waiting by the car, not like a driver on the clock, but like someone who understood what it meant to carry something heavy. Wiping her eyes, Camille turned back toward Achim. "Thank you," she said simply. Miles nodded. "Sometimes we all need to be reminded of the places that help us breathe." They stood in comfortable silence, listening to the rhythm of the waves. For the first time in months, maybe years, Camille felt her shoulders relax, her mind quiet. "Ready to go?" Miles asked after a while, without rushing her. Camille took one last look at the ocean, drawing the peace of the moment into herself. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." The drive to the hotel was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence now, peaceful, almost companionable. When they pulled up to the Four Seasons, Camille found herself reluctant to leave the car and Miles's calming presence. "Thank you again," she said, gathering her belongings. "For the detour, I needed that more than I realized." "You're welcome, Camille," Miles replied, his voice warm. "Sometimes we all need a reminder of who we really are." As she stepped out of the car, Camille turned back impulsively. Do you always drive for Uber?" Miles nodded. "Most evenings, yes. I'm working on my master's degree during the day." "What are you studying?" she asked, genuinely interested. "Environmental engineering," he replied, "focusing on coastal preservation, actually." Camille smiled, the first real smile in days. "That sounds fascinating." "It is," Miles agreed. "The ocean has always been important to me too." Their eyes met for a moment, and Camille felt something shift inside her, a small spark of connection that surprised her with its intensity. "Good night, Miles," she said softly. "Good night, Camille. I hope tomorrow is better." As the car pulled away, Camille stood watching until it disappeared around a corner. In her hand, she still clutched the receipt with his driver information. She carefully folded it and placed it in her wallet before entering the hotel. For the first time since landing in San Francisco, she didn't feel completely lost. The next morning, Camille woke to sunlight streaming through the hotel windows. She had slept deeply, without the nightmares that had plagued her for weeks. For a moment she lay still, remembering the events of the previous night, the cliffside overlook, the sound of the waves, and Miles's quiet understanding. Her phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand. 12 missed calls from her father. With a sigh, Camille picked it up and dialed his number. "Finally," Richard Harrington's voice boomed through the speaker. "Where have you been? We need to discuss damage control after that pitch disaster." "Good morning to you too, Dad," Camille said, fighting to maintain the sense of calm she had found last night. "This isn't a joke, Camille. You embarrassed yourself and me in front of people I've walked with for decades." Camille closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight settling back on her shoulders. "The idea is sound, Dad. They just didn't give it a chance. Because it's not viable. When are you going to start taking your future seriously? Bradley called me, by the way. He's concerned about you." "Bradley called you?" Camille sat up straight, anger flaring. "He broke up with me 2 days ago. He has no right to discuss my life with you." "He cares about your future even if you don't," Richard continued. "He mentioned you might be interested in joining his new venture. It would be a smart move, Camille, a way to salvage something from this mess." The thought of working for Bradley after he had dismissed both her and her business idea made Camille's stomach turn. "I'm not interested." "Don't be stubborn. What's your alternative plan?" "Another half-baked idea that will waste more of my contact's time." Camille's gaze drifted to the window, where she could see a sliver of ocean in the distance. The memory of standing at the overlook last night gave her a flicker of strength. "I need to think, Dad. I'll call you later." "Camille, don't you dare hang up." She ended the call, knowing she would pay for it later, but needing the quiet. Leaning back against the pillows, Camille found herself thinking about Miles. His calm presence, the way he had known exactly what she needed without her having to explain. Almost without thinking, she reached for her phone again and opened the Uber app. Miles's profile was there in her recent rides. On impulse, she scheduled a pickup for later that afternoon, hoping he would be the one to accept the ride. For the first time in months, Camille felt a spark of something like anticipation. Camille spent the morning wandering through the hotel, avoiding her father's calls and trying to sort through her thoughts. By afternoon, she had made a decision. She wouldn't give up on her business idea just because one group of investors didn't see its value. She needed to regroup, maybe adjust her approach, but the core concept was sound. At 2 p.m., her phone pinged with a notification. Her Uber driver was arriving. Heart beating a little faster than normal, Camille gathered her things and headed to the hotel entrance. The Blacktown CR was there, and when she opened the door, Miles looked up in surprise. "Camille," he said, recognition and something else flashing in his eyes. "I didn't realize it was you booking the ride." "Is that okay?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. A small smile curved his lips. "Of course. Where to today?" Camille slid into the back seat, feeling oddly nervous. "I don't actually have a destination in mind," she admitted. "I just wanted to get out of the hotel, away from my phone and my father's voice." Miles nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Sometimes no destination is the best destination." "Could we just drive for a while?" Camille asked. "Maybe along the coast?" "I know just the route," Miles said, pulling away from the curb. As they drove through the city and toward the coastline, Camille found herself relaxing. Miles didn't press her to talk, and the silence between them was comfortable. Occasionally, he would point out a landmark or share a brief story about growing up in the area. "So, environmental engineering," Camille said after a while. "How did you get interested in that?" Miles glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "My grandfather was a fisherman. He used to take me out on his boat when I was a kid, taught me about the ocean, the fragile balance of the ecosystem. When I was 16, a chemical spill destroyed his fishing grounds. He lost everything." His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. I decided then that I wanted to work on protecting coastal environments. That's a powerful motivation, Camille said softly. Miles nodded. What about you? What led you to connect farms with restaurants? Camille was surprised by his interest and found herself explaining her idea with more enthusiasm than she had felt in weeks. My roommate in college came from a family of small organic farmers. Tihei grew amazing produce, but struggled to compete with big agricultural corporations. Meanwhile, I kept hearing chefs complain about not being able to source the quality ingredients they wanted. So you saw a gap that needed filling, Miles said. Exactly. Camille leaned forward, warming to the subject. A platform that connects small, sustainable farms directly with restaurants, cutting out the middlemen and distribution networks that drive up costs and reduce quality. Sounds like a solid idea to me, Miles said. Why didn't the investors go for it? Camille sighed. They said it wasn't disruptive enough, not enough potential for explosive growth. They wanted something they could scale into a billion-dollar company within 5 years. But not every good idea needs to be a billion-dollar unicorn, Miles pointed out. Sometimes sustainable growth is better in the long run. That's what I tried to tell them, Camille exclaimed. But in Silicon Valley, if you're not aiming to be the next Google or Facebook, you're thinking too small. Miles was quiet for a moment. Maybe you were pitching to the wrong investors. The simple observation struck Camille with unexpected force. She had been so focused on impressing her father's network that she hadn't considered looking elsewhere. You might be right, she said slowly. My father's contacts are all old-school tech investors. They're looking for the next big app or platform. Maybe I need to find investors who actually care about sustainability and food systems. Exactly, Miles agreed. People who understand the value of what you're trying to create, not just the potential profit margin. As they talked, Miles drove along the coastal highway, the ocean a constant presence beside them. Camille found herself opening up more, sharing details about her life in New York, her complicated relationship with her father, even her recent breakup with Bradley. He said I wasn't serious enough about my career, she explained, shaking her head. Which is ironic, considering I moved across the country and left everything behind to pursue this business. Sounds like he wanted you to pursue his idea of success, not your own, Miles observed. The insight hit close to home. That's actually exactly it, Camille said, surprised by his perception. Bradley always had very specific ideas about what success looked like, and it usually involved following his lead. Miles smiled slightly. Some people confuse support with control. They had been driving for over an hour when Miles pulled into a small parking lot next to a beach. Unlike the cliffside overlook from the night before, this was a stretch of sandy shore, with gentle waves lapping at the edge. I thought you might like to see a different kind of ocean view, Miles explained as he turned off the engine. Camille didn't hesitate this time, immediately opening her door and stepping out. The late afternoon sun was warm on her face as she walked toward the water, kicking off her shoes to feel the sand between her toes. Miles followed at a respectful distance, hands in his pockets. When Camille reached the water's edge, letting the cool waves wash over her feet, she turned to find him watching her with a gentle expression. Thank you for this, she said. For yesterday, too. I can't remember the last time I felt so peaceful. The ocean has that effect, Miles replied, looking out at the horizon. It reminds us how small our problems really are in the grand scheme of things. They stood side by side, watching the waves. Camille was acutely aware of his presence beside her, tall and steady, with a quietness that felt like strength rather than hesitation. Tell me more about your studies, she said, genuinely interested. What kind of work do you hope to do when you finish your degree? As Miles began to explain his research on innovative approaches to preventing coastal erosion, Camille found herself drawn not just to high-S words, but to the passion behind them. His deep voice took on a new energy when he talked about his work, his hands gesturing to emphasize key points. Sorry, he said after a few minutes, looking slightly embarrassed. I can get carried away talking about this stuff. Don't apologize, Camille said quickly. It's refreshing to hear someone talk about work they actually care about, not just what will make them the most money or look impressive at cocktail parties. Miles smiled. and Camille felt a flutter in her chest at the warmth in his eyes. They walked along the beach, talking easily about everything and nothing, favorite books, childhood memories, places they hoped to visit someday. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the water, Camille realized with surprise that she had spent nearly 3 hours with this man she barely knew, yet felt more comfortable with him than with people she had known for years. "I should probably get you back to your hotel," Miles said eventually, though he sounded reluctant. "I suppose so," Camille agreed, equally hesitant to end their time together. As they walked back to the car, she gathered her courage. "Miles, I know this is unorthodox, but would you want to meet for coffee sometime? Not as my driver, but just to talk more?" Miles looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Are you sure that's what you want, Camille? I'm not exactly part of your usual social circle." "Maybe that's exactly why I want to," she replied honestly. "My usual social circle hasn't brought me much happiness lately." A slow smile spread across Miles's face. "In that case, I'd like that very much." They exchanged phone numbers, and Camille felt a flutter of anticipation as she saved his contact information. On the drive back to the hotel, they made plans to meet the following afternoon at a small cafe Miles knew near Golden Gate Park. When they pulled up to the Four Seasons, Camille found herself lingering, reluctant to say goodbye. "Thank you again for today," she said. "It was exactly what I needed." "I'm glad," Miles replied. "Sometimes we all need to step away from our lives to see them more clearly." Their eyes met and held for a moment longer than necessary. Then Camille reluctantly gathered her things and stepped out of the car. "Until tomorrow," Miles said. "Until tomorrow," Camille echoed, watching as he drove away. As she walked into the hotel lobby, Camille realized she was smiling, a real, genuine smile that felt foreign on her face after so many weeks of stress and disappointment. Something had shifted inside her, a small spark of possibility that hadn't been there before. Her phone buzzed with another call from her father, but for once Camille didn't feel the usual dread. Whatever happened next, she had found something important, a reminder of who she used to be, and perhaps a glimpse of who she could become. And it had all started with a simple question from a kind stranger. "Rough day?" Camille woke the next morning feeling lighter than she had in months. The memory of her time with Miles brought a smile to her face as she stretched in the luxurious hotel bed. Their coffee date was set for 2 p.m., and she found herself watching the clock, eager for the hours to pass. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Her father's name flashed on the screen. With a sigh, Camille answered. "Camille, we need to talk," Richard Harrington said without preamble. "I've arranged a lunch meeting with Bradley, and some potential investors who might be willing to give your idea another look, with significant modifications, of course." Camille's good mood dimmed. "Dad, I told you I'm not interested in working with Bradley." "Don't be childish," her father replied sharply. "This isn't about your relationship. It's about salvaging your professional reputation. Bradley's willing to incorporate elements of your concept into his new venture. It's the best offer you're going to get after that disastrous pitch." Camille closed her eyes, feeling the familiar pressure building in her chest. "When is this lunch?" "Today at Nguyen, the restaurant at the St. Regis. Don't be late and dress appropriately. These people expect professionalism." Before she could object, her father hung up. Camille stared at the phone, torn between her instinct to please him and her growing desire to chart her own course. The thought of sitting across from Bradley, watching him take credit for her ideas while her father nodded approvingly, made her stomach turn. But the alternative, openly defying her fate, there and dealing with the fallout, was equally daunting. Richard Harrington's disapproval was a heavy burden, one she had spent her life trying to avoid. With a frustrated sigh, Camille got out of bed and headed to the shower. She would go to the lunch, if only to keep the peace, but she wouldn't agree to anything. And she would make sure to be finished in time for her coffee with Miles. The St. Regis restaurant was exactly the kind of place her father read, elegant, expensive, and filled with people who measured worth in dollars and connections. Camille smoothed down her designer dress, a navy blue number that projected the professional image her father expected, and walked toward the table where he sat with Bradley and 2 older men in expensive suits. "Ah, here she is," Richard stood, gesturing for Camille to join them. "Gentlemen, my daughter, Camille." Bradley stood as well, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes. At 32, he looked every inch the successful entrepreneur in his tailored suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. Once Camille had found his confidence attractive, now she saw only calculation in his gaze. "Camille," he said, pulling out her chair, "you look wonderful." She nodded stiffly, taking her seat without meeting his eyes. Her father immediately launched into introductions. "These are James Westfield and Martin Chen, partners at Horizon Ventures. They're interested in hearing more about the agricultural distribution platform concept, with Bradley's refinements." Camille forced a polite smile. "It's nice to meet you both." The conversation flowed around her as Bradley outlined their concept, a streamlined version of her idea that emphasized technology and rapid scaling over the relationships with small farmers that had been at the heart of Camille's vision. The original concept was too limited in scope, Bradley explained smoothly. By broadening the supplier base and focusing on a subscription model for restaurants, we can achieve the growth metrics investors expect. "And what happens to the small farms that can't meet increased demand?" Camille asked, unable to stay silent any longer. Bradley's smile tightened. "They can participate to the extent they're able, but we can't limit the platform's potential based on sentimentality." "It's not sentimentality," Camille countered. "It's the entire point of the project, to create sustainable relationships that benefit both sides." "Camille," her father interjected, his tone warning. James Westfield raised a hand. "No, let her speak. After all, it was originally her concept." Encouraged by this small acknowledgement, Camille leaned forward. "The value of my platform isn't just connecting buyers and sellers. It's about creating a system that supports sustainable agriculture while giving restaurants access to better ingredients. If we turn it into just another delivery app, we lose what makes it special." "Special doesn't necessarily mean profitable," Martin Chen remarked. "It can be both," Camille insisted. "There's a growing market of consumers who care about where their food comes from. Restaurants that can tell the story of their ingredients have a competitive advantage." Bradley exchanged a look with her father. "This is exactly the kind of idealism that limited the original pitch," he said. "The market is driven by convenience and price, not stories." "That's not true," Camille said, thinking of her conversations with Miles about his work. "People do care. Maybe not everyone, but enough to build something meaningful." "Meaningful doesn't attract Series A funding," her father said dismissively. The lunch continued in this vein, with Camille becoming increasingly frustrated as her vision was dismantled and reconstructed into something she barely recognized. By the time dessert arrived, she had fallen silent, watching as the three men carved up her dream while Bradley occasionally patted her hand in false solidarity. When the investors excused themselves to take a call, Bradley leaned close to Camille. "This is a good opportunity, Cam," he said quietly. "Your name will still be attached to the project. You'll get credit." "For what?" she asked. "That's not my idea anymore." "It's a better version of your idea," he replied. "More viable. Don't let pride get in the way of success." Camille looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how she had spent 2 years with someone who understood her so little. "I should go," she said, checking her watch. It was 1:30 p.m. "We're not finished here," her father objected. "The investors will be back in a minute." "I have another appointment," Camille said, standing up. "I've heard enough to know this isn't the right direction for me." Richard's face darkened. "Camille, don't be difficult. This is your chance to salvage something from this situation." "I don't need to salvage anything, Dad. My idea is still good. I just need to find the right people who understand it." She gathered her purse, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and liberation. "Thank you for arranging this, but I'm not interested in moving forward with Bradley's version." Bradley's expression hardened. "This is a mistake, Camille. You're throwing away a golden opportunity because of hurt feelings." "No," she replied calmly. "I'm choosing not to compromise on something I believe in. There's a difference." With that, she turned and walked out of the restaurant, her heart pounding but her steps determined. Outside, she took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling as though she had just broken free of something heavy and constraining. Checking her phone, she saw she had just enough time to make it to the cafe to meet Miles. She hailed a taxi, giving the driver the address Miles had texted her. As the taxi wound through the city streets, Camille realized she was smiling again. For the first time in years, she had stood up to her father and Bradley, defending her own vision instead of conceding to theirs, and it felt good. The cafe was a small, charming place tucked away on a quiet street near Golden Gate Park. When Camille arrived, she spotted Miles immediately, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. He was dressed casually in jeans and a simple blue button-down shirt that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. Without the barrier of the car between them, she was struck again by how tall he was and how his presence seemed to fill the space around him. He stood when he saw her, a warm smile spreading across his face. "You made it." "I did," Camille replied, suddenly feeling shy. Outside the context of driver and passenger, there was a new dimension to their interaction. "Have you been waiting long?" "Just a few minutes," Miles assured her, pulling out her chair. "I took the liberty of ordering you a latte. I hope that's okay." Camille sat down, touched by the thoughtful gesture. "That's perfect, thank you." As she settled in, Miles studied her face. "Everything all right? You seem a little tense." Camille sighed, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Just had a difficult lunch with my father and my ex. They're trying to take over my business idea and reshape it into something I don't even recognize." Miles frowned. "That doesn't seem fair." "It's not," Camille agreed. "But I did something I've never done before. I walked away, told them I wasn't interested in their version." "Good for you," Miles said, his eyes warming with approval. "Standing up for your vision takes courage." The simple validation sent a wave of warmth through Camille. Her whole life, she had been surrounded by people who measured success in very specific terms: money, status, recognition. Miles was the first person who seemed to value integrity over achievement. "Enough about my drama," she said, taking a sip of her latte. "Tell me more about your research. Yesterday you mentioned something about natural barriers for coastal protection." Miles's face lit up as he began explaining his work on using restored oyster reefs and seagrass beds to protect shorelines from erosion. Camille found herself drawn in by his enthusiasm and the clear purpose that drove him. "The solutions are already there in nature," he explained. "We just need to work with them instead of against them." "That's similar to what I've been trying to explain about sustainable farming," Camille said, leaning forward. "It's about working with natural systems instead of trying to force artificial ones." They fell into an easy conversation, discovering shared values despite their different backgrounds. Miles told her about growing up in Oakland with his mother and grandfather, spending weekends on his grandfather's fishing boat, and how he'd worked his way through undergraduate studies with various jobs, including driving for Uber. "The flexible hours work well with my class schedule," he explained, "and sometimes I meet interesting people." His eyes met hers with a hint of playfulness. Camille laughed. "Do many of your passengers have meltdowns and then ask you out for coffee?" "You'd be the first," Miles admitted with a smile, "but I'm glad you did." The afternoon stretched on, their conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic. Camille found herself sharing things she rarely discussed with anyone: her complicated relationship with her father, her doubts about the path she had been following, her growing disillusionment with the world she had been raised in. "I feel like I've been living someone else's idea of my life," she confessed. "My father's, Bradley's. I've been so focused on meeting their expectations that I lost track of my own." Miles nodded thoughtfully. "It's easy to get caught up in other people's visions for us, especially when those people have strong personalities." "Exactly," Camille agreed. "My father has always been overwhelming. He has a way of making his opinion feel like the only valid one in the room." "And what about your mother?" Miles asked. A shadow crossed Camille's face. "She died when I was 16. Cancer. She was always the buffer between my father and me. After she was gone, it became much harder to stand my ground." Miles reached across the table, briefly touching her hand. "I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult." The simple gesture of comfort, offered without expectation, brought unexpected tears to Camille's eyes. She blinked them away quickly. It was a long time ago. Some losses don't fade with time, Miles said quietly. They just become part of who we are. Camille looked at him, struck by how easily he seemed to understand her. Yes, that's exactly it. As the afternoon sun began to lower, casting golden light through the cafe windows, they finally noticed the time. I can't believe we've been talking for 3 hours, Camille said, surprised. Miles smiled. Time flies in good company. Neither seemed eager to end their time together, so when Miles suggested a walk through the nearby park, Camille readily agreed. They strolled along the winding paths, continuing their conversation as the day began to fade into evening. So, what's next for your business idea? Miles asked as they passed a small pond where ducks were settling in for the night. Camille sighed. I'm not sure. I still believe in the concept, but I need to find investors who share my vision rather than wanting to change it completely. Have you considered looking beyond traditional venture capital? Miles suggested. There are impact investors who specifically focus on sustainable food systems. They might be more aligned with what you're trying to do. Camille stopped walking, turning to face him. No, I haven't. My father's network is all traditional tech investors, so that's all I've been exposed to. Miles nodded. One of my professors works with a group called Green Future Fund. They invest in environmentally focused startups. I could introduce you if you'd like. You would do that? Camille asked, touched by the offer. Of course, Miles replied simply. Your idea has merit. It deserves to be seen by people who understand its value. They had reached a small bench overlooking a garden. As they sat down, Camille was acutely aware of Miles beside her, his warmth, his steady presence, the subtle scent of his cologne mingling with the garden flowers. Thank you, she said softly. Not just for the introduction, but for listening, for taking me seriously. Miles turned to look at her, his expression gentle but intense. You should always be taken seriously, Camille. Something shifted in the air between them, a current of attraction that had been building since that first night in the car. Camille found herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by a pull she couldn't quite explain. Miles hesitated, then slowly reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, leaving a trail of warmth. I know we just met, he said quietly, but I feel like I've known you much longer. I feel the same way, Camille admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment it seemed he might kiss her. Camille found herself hoping he would, but instead, Miles took a breath and stood up, offering his hand to help her from the bench. It's getting late, he said. Let me take you back to your hotel. Camille took his hand, trying to hide her disappointment. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and he helped her to her feet, but didn't immediately let go. They walked back through the park in companionable silence, still holding hands. When they reached the street, Miles hailed a taxi rather than calling an Uber. Not working tonight? Camille asked Dee as they slid into the back seat. Miles shook his head. Not as a driver, no. I have some research to finish for class tomorrow. The taxi ride to the Four Seasons was too short in Camille's opinion. When they arrived, Miles asked the driver to wait and walked Camille to the entrance. I had a wonderful time today, she said, reluctant to say goodbye. So did I, Miles replied, his smile warming his eyes. Could I see you again? Maybe dinner tomorrow, Nihashti? Camille's heart lifted. I'd like that very much. I know a great place near the waterfront, Miles said. Nothing fancy, but the food is excellent. Sounds perfect, Camille replied, appreciating that he wasn't trying to impress her with an expensive restaurant. Miles hesitated, then leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. Good night, Camille. Good night, Miles, she replied, her skin tingling where his lips had touched. She watched as he returned to the waiting taxi, turning once to wave before getting in. As the taxi pulled away, Camille stood for a moment, touching her cheek and smiling to herself. Inside the hotel, her phone buzzed with a text from her father. We need to talk. Dinner in my suite. 8 p.m. Camille's smile faded, but the warm glow inside her remained. Whatever confrontation awaited her upstairs, she felt stronger than she had in years. Something was changing within her, a quiet awakening of her own strength, her own voice. And Miles, with his calm understanding and gentle encouragement, was helping her remember who she really was. Richard Harrington's suite at the Four Seasons was a testament to his success, spacious, elegant, and commanding a spectacular view of the city. He was on the phone when Camille arrived, pacing by the window as he barked instructions to someone about market projections and quarterly targets. He held up a finger, signaling Camille to wait, not bothering to acknowledge her properly. She took a seat on the sofa, mentally preparing herself for the conversation to come. When he finally ended the call, Richard turned to his daughter with a stern expression. "Your behavior today was unprofessional and embarrassing. Those investors were doing you a favor by even considering a revised version of your proposal." Camille took a deep breath. "They weren't considering my proposal, Dad. They were considering Bradley's version, which completely undermines the core values of my concept." Richard waved a dismissive hand. "The core value of any business is profit, Camille. Everything else is secondary." "Not to me," she replied steadily. "I believe a business can be profitable while also doing good in the world." Her father sighed heavily, pouring himself a scotch from the suite's bar. "This idealism is why you're ailing. Bradley understands the market. He knows what investors want to see." "Bradley cares about Bradley," Camille said flatly. "He's using my idea as a stepping stone for his own advancement." Richard took a seat across from her, studying her over the rim of his glass. "Are you still upset about the breakup? Don't let personal feelings cloud your business judgment." "This has nothing to do with our relationship," Camille insisted. "It's about my vision for the company. I won't compromise on that just to get funding." "Then you won't get funding at all," her father said bluntly. "No serious investor will back your original concept as it stands." Camille thought of Miles's suggestion about impact investors. "There are other types of investors out there, Dad. People who understand the value of sustainability and ethical business practices." Richard scoffed. "Those niche investors don't have the capital to scale a business properly." "Maybe I don't want to scale as aggressively as you think I should," Camille countered. "Maybe success looks different to me than it does to you." Her father's eyes narrowed. "And where is this newfound philosophy coming from? You've been in San Francisco for 3 days. Suddenly you're an expert on alternative business models?" Camille hesitated, not ready to tell her father about Miles. "I've been doing some research talking to people outside your usual circle." "What people?" Richard demanded. "Just different perspectives," Camille said vaguely. "People who see value beyond just the bottom line." Richard studied her for a moment, then set down his glass with deliberate precision. "You've met someone." Camille felt her cheeks warm. Her father had always been unnervingly perceptive when it suited him. "My personal life isn't relevant to this discussion," she said, trying to redirect the conversation. "It is if someone is filling your head with impractical ideas that could derail your future," Richard countered. "Who is he? Someone from one of those sustainable startups you're suddenly so interested in?" "Dad, stop," Camille said firmly. "Who I spend time with is my business. And for the record, he's not filling my head with anything. He's just the first person in a long time who's actually listened to what I want, not what he thinks I should want." Richard's expression hardened. "I see, and does this paragon of virtue have a name, a profession?" Camille stood up, unwilling to subject Miles to her father's judgment. "I'm not doing this. I came here to discuss my business, not my personal life." "They're connected, Camille," her father insisted. "Everything is connected. Your choices now will determine your future, professionally and personally." "Then I choose to pursue my business as my way," Camille said, moving toward the door. "With or without your approval." Richard stood as well, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Without my connections, without my financial support, where exactly do you think this venture will go?" The implied threat was clear. Richard Harrington had funded Camille's life and her initial business expenses. Without his backing, she would struggle. Camille turned to face him, her chin raised. "I'll figure it out. People start businesses without famous fathers every day. And most of them fail," Richard replied coldly. "Then I'll fail on my own terms," Camille said, her voice steady despite the knot of fear in her stomach. "At least the failure will be mine, not some watered-down compromise I never believed in." She left before he could respond, closing the door firmly behind her. In the elevator down to her floor, she leaned against the wall, her hands shaking slightly. She had never stood up to her father so directly before. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Back in her room, Camille kicked off her shoes and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process the confrontation. Her phone chimed with a text. Expecting another demand from her father, she was pleasantly surprised to see Miles's name on the screen. Just wanted to say goodnight. Looking forward to tomorrow. Sleep well, Camille. The simple message brought a smile to her face and steadied her nerves. She typed back, "Good night, Miles, can't wait for tomorrow." Setting down the phone, Camille walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like she was making choices for herself, not to please others. It was scary, but it also felt right. Whatever happened next, with her business, with her father, with Miles, she would face it on her own terms. The next morning, Camille woke to a series of texts from Bradley. "Your father told me about your conversation. You're making a mistake. The investors were impressed by the concept. Don't throw this opportunity away. Call me. We can work something out that makes everyone happy." Camille deleted the messages without responding. She had nothing more to say to Bradley. Instead, she opened her laptop and began researching impact investors who focused on sustainable food systems, making notes about their investment criteria and portfolio companies. By noon, she had compiled a list of potential investors who might be interested in her original concept. She also drafted a revised business plan that emphasized the ethical and environmental benefits of her platform alongside the financial projections. Her phone rang. It was her assistant in New York, Jessica. "Camille, is everything okay? Your father called the office asking for all the files related to the farm-to-restaurant platform. He said you asked him to take over some aspects of the business." Camille sat up straight, alarm coursing through her. "I did no such thing. Those files are confidential." "That's what I thought," Jessica replied. "I told him I needed to confirm with you first. He wasn't happy." "Don't give him anything," Camille instructed. "In fact, can you send me all the files securely? I want to make sure I have everything." "Of course," Jessica said. "Is there something I should know? This doesn't sound like your usual arrangement with your father." Camille sighed. "Things are changing, Jess. I'm taking more control of the business direction, and Dad isn't thrilled about it." "About time," Jessica said with surprising candor. "Sorry, that was unprofessional. But you've got great ideas, Camille. You don't need anyone diluting them." The support warmed Camille. "Thanks, Jess, that means a lot." After ending the call, Camille paced her hotel room, troubled by her father's attempt to access her business files. It was a boundary violation that confirmed her growing suspicion. Her father didn't respect her as a business owner or as an adult capable of making her own decisions. Her phone chimed with a text from Miles. "Looking forward to tonight. Pick you up at 7. The message brightened her mood instantly. "Perfect. See you then." With renewed determination, Camille returned to her research. By late afternoon, she had emails drafted to 3 potential investors, explaining her concept and requesting meetings. She also had the beginnings of a presentation that better articulated the unique value proposition of her platform, not just as a business opportunity, but as a means of supporting sustainable agriculture and improving the restaurant industry's environmental footprint. As the time for her dinner with Miles approached, Camille found herself standing before the closet, uncertain what to wear. The automatic impulse was to select something designer and impressive, the armor she had always worn in New York. But something made her pause. Miles had seen her at her most vulnerable, tear-stained and exhausted. He had responded with kindness, not judgment. There was no need for armor with him. She chose a simpler sundress instead, light blue cotton with a pattern of small white flowers. It was pretty without being showy, comfortable without being casual. Looking in the mirror, Camille was struck by how different she appeared from the polished socialite who had arrived in San Francisco just days ago. Her face seemed softer somehow, her eyes clearer. At precisely 7 p.m., the hotel phone rang. Miles was in the lobby. Camille grabbed a light cardigan and her purse a flutter of anticipation in her stomach as she rode the elevator down. When the doors opened, she saw him immediately, tall and handsome in dark jeans and a charcoal grey button-down shirt waiting near the front desk. His face lit up when he spotted her, a smile spreading across his features that made Camille's heart beat faster. "You look beautiful," he said as she approached. "Thank you," Camille replied, suddenly shy. "You look pretty good yourself." Miles offered his arm, a gentlemanly gesture that charmed her. "Shall we? I thought we'd walk if that's okay. The restaurant is only about 10 minutes from here, and it's a nice evening." "That sounds perfect," Camille agreed, slipping her hand into the crook of his elbow. As they walked through the streets of San Francisco, Camille was aware of curious glances from passers-by. They made a striking couple, Miles with his height and quiet confidence, Camille with her blonde hair and designer purse. But for once, she didn't care what others might think or say. Being with Miles felt right in a way that defied explanation. The restaurant was a small seafood place near the water, with a weathered exterior that spoke of decades of service. Inside it was warm and inviting, with wooden tables, nautical decorations, and large windows overlooking the bay. "My grandfather used to bring me here," Miles explained as the Y were seated at a corner table with a view of the water. "They still get their fish from local boats, including some of his old friends." "It's lovely," Camille said, genuinely charmed by the unpretentious atmosphere. "Much better than the stuffy places my father always chooses." They ordered wine and appetizers, falling into the easy conversation that had characterized their previous meetings. Miles told her about his day at the university, a breakthrough H in his research project, and his upcoming presentation to a conservation group. Camille shared her research on impact investors and her plans to revise her business pitch. "I've been thinking about what you said, about finding the right audience for my idea. You were right. I was pitching to people who don't share my values or understand what I'm trying to create." Miles nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about convincing the wrong people. It's about finding the right ones who already get it." "Exactly," Camille agreed, leaning forward enthusiastically. "And there are investors out there who care about sustainability and ethical business practices. I just need to connect with them." "I spoke with my professor today," Miles said. "He's happy to introduce you to some people at Green Future Fund. They're always looking for innovative approaches to sustainable food systems." Camille reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Thank you. That means so much to me." Miles turned his hand to hold hers properly, his thumb tracing small circles on her skin. "You're welcome. Your idea deserves to be seen by people who understand its value." The simple touch sent warmth spiraling through Camille. The connection between them felt both new and somehow familiar, as if they had known each other in some other life. Their main courses arrived, fresh grilled fish for Miles, seared scallops for Camille. The food was excellent, simply prepared to highlight the quality of the ingredients. "This is amazing," Camille said after her first bite. "So much better than the over-designed, tiny portions they serve at those trendy places." Miles smiled. "Good food doesn't need to be complicated. Quality ingredients prepared with care, that's all it takes." "That's essentially the philosophy behind my business idea," Camille pointed out. "Connecting people who care about quality with those who produce it." As they ate, their conversation deepened. Miles told her about his mother, a high school English teacher who had raised him alone after his father left when he was a baby. "She worked so hard to give me opportunities," he said, his voice warm with affection. "Extra jobs in the summer to pay for science camps, hours helping me with college applications. Everything I've achieved is because of her foundation." "She sounds amazing," Camille said, touched by his obvious love and respect for his mother. "She is," Miles agreed. "I think you'd like her. She has no patience for pretense or superficiality. She judges people by their character, not their bank account or last name." "I'd be nervous to meet her," Camille admitted. "I'm not sure how I'd measure up." Miles looked at her intently. "Better than you think. She'd see what I see. So, Hamion, who's finding her own path, her own voice, that's what matters to her." The implication that Miles might want her to meet his mother someday sent a flutter through Camille's chest. It suggested a future, possibilities beyond their current connection. As they finished their meal and shared a dessert, a simple but delicious bread pudding with vanilla sauce, Camille found herself wishing the evening would never end. Being with Miles felt like coming home to a place she hadn't known she was missing. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront, the lights of the Bay Bridge twinkling in the distance. The night air was cool but not cold, carrying the salt scent of the ocean. "Thank you for tonight," Camille said as they strolled, their hands linked between them. "For dinner, for the investor introduction, for everything really." Miles stopped walking, turning to face her. In the gentle glow of the street tea lamps, his eyes were warm and serious. "You don't need to thank me, Camille. Being with you these past few days has been... I don't even have the right words for it. Special doesn't seem adequate." Camille's heart quickened. "I feel the same way. It's strange, isn't it, how quickly this has happened?" "Maybe," Miles said, reaching up to gently touch her cheek. "Or maybe some connections are just meant to be, and time is irrelevant." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but Camille found herself rising on her toes to meet him halfway, her eyes fluttering closed as their lips met. The kiss was gentle at first, a soft exploration, but it quickly deepened as Miles's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her closer. Camille's hands found their way to his shoulders, steadying herself as the world seemed to spin around them. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Miles rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since I first saw you in my rearview mirror." Camille smiled, her heart full. "I'm glad you finally did." They continued their walk, closer now, Miles's arm around her shoulders, her arm around his waist. The physical connection mirrored the emotional one that had been building between them since that first night. As they approached the hotel, Camille felt a reluctance to end the evening. "Would you like to come up for coffee or a drink?" Miles hesitated, his expression conflicted. "I would, very much, but..." "But?" Camille prompted, a flicker of uncertainty in her chest. Miles took both her hands in his. "Camille, I like you, a lot, more than I probably should after just a few days, and that's why I want to be careful. I don't want to rush this and risk ruining something that feels important." Relief and warmth flooded through her. "I understand, and I feel the same way. This is special, worth taking our time with." Miles smiled, lifting one hand to kiss her knuckles gently. "Exactly. Rain check on that coffee?" "Definitely," Camille agreed. They said goodnight with another kiss, this one lingering and full of promise. As Miles finally turned to leave, he paused. "Would you be free tomorrow afternoon? There's a place I'd like to take you, somewhere important to me." "I'd love that," Camille replied. "I'll pick you up at 1, Miles said with a smile. "Sweet dreams, Camille." "Sweet dreams, Miles," she echoed, watching as he walked away, turning once to wave before disappearing around a corner. In her hotel room, Camille felt too energized to sleep. She kicked off her shoes and curled up on the window seat, looking out at the city lights, replaying the evening in her mind. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "We need to resolve this situation. Breakfast tomorrow, 8 a.m., my suite." Camille stood outside her father's suite at precisely 8 a.m., steeling herself for the confrontation ahead. The memory of her evening with Miles gave her strength as she knocked on the door. Richard Harrington opened it himself, already dressed in an impeccable suit despite the early hour. "Come in," he said, curtly, turning away without waiting for her response. The suite's dining area was set for breakfast, with an elaborate spread that would mostly go uneaten. Her father was never one to waste time on food when there was business to discuss. "Coffee?" he asked, already pouring himself a cup. "Please," Camille replied, taking a seat at the table. Richard handed her a cup and sat across from her, his expression calculating. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. Perhaps I was too harsh." Camille raised an eyebrow, surprised by this apparent concession. Her father was not known for backing down. "I understand you're passionate about your original concept," he continued. "And while I still think Bradley's approach makes more business sense, I respect that it's ultimately your decision." "Thank you," Camille said cautiously, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Richard took a sip of his coffee. "That said, I want to be clear about what my support entails. If you choose to pursue your version, without the modifications Bradley suggested, I won't be able to provide the same level of financial backing or access to my network. There it was. Not an ultimatum exactly, but close enough. I understand, Camille replied evenly. Do you? Her father's tone sharpened. Because pursuing a business without adequate capital or connections is a recipe for failure, Camille. And failure in Silicon Valley isn't something you can just brush off. It follows you. I'm aware of the risks, she said, but I'd rather try and fail at something I believe in than succeed at something I do not. Richard studied her for a long moment. This new resolve of yours, it's about this man you've been seeing, isn't it? Camille tensed. My business decisions are my own, Dad, but influenced by new perspectives, he pressed. Who is he, Camille? What does he do that makes him such an expert on business strategy? He's not advising me on business strategy, Camille replied firmly. He simply encouraged me to believe in my own vision. Richard's eyes narrowed. And does this paragon have a name? Camille hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding. His name is Miles Thorne. He's studying for his master's in environmental engineering. A student, Richard said dismissively. And how did you meet this graduate student who's so invested in your business decisions? Camille took a deep breath. He was my Uber driver from the airport. Richard stared at her for a moment, then let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Your Uber driver? You're making life-altering business decisions based on the advice of a car service driver you met 3 days ago. That's not fair, Camille said, her voice tight. Miles is intelligent, educated, and genuinely cares about creating positive change in the world. And he's not advising me on my business. He's simply supporting me in standing up for what I believe in. I see, Richard said coldly. And where is this relationship headed exactly? Do you think someone like that, with no connections, no family background, driving a car to make ends meet, has any future with someone like you? Anger flared in Camille's chest. Someone like me? You mean someone who was born rich? Who's had every advantage handed to her? Maybe that's exactly the kind of perspective I need, Dad. Someone who's worked for everything he has, who understands value beyond dollar signs. Richard's expression hardened. This is exactly why I'm concerned, Camille. You're being naive. The real world doesn't run on idealism. It runs on money, power, and connections. Your driver friend might have filled your head with romantic notions, but at the end of the day, you come from different worlds. Maybe different worlds is exactly what I need, Camille replied, standing up. I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm not going to let you dictate my personal life or my business decisions anymore. I'm going to pursue my platform my way, and I'm going to see Miles for as long as it feels right to both of us. Richard stood as well, his voice dangerously calm. And if I withdraw all financial support, the fund for your apartment in New York, the seed money for your business, the credit cards linked to my accounts? Camille felt a chill run through her. Her father was threatening to cut her off completely, something he had never done before, despite their disagreements. Then I'll figure it out, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm not the first person to start a business without a trust fund, and I won't be the last. This is a mistake, Camille, Richard warned. One you'll regret when the novelty of playing at independence wears off. The only thing I'd regret, Camille replied, moving toward the door, is continuing to let fear of your disapproval dictate my choices. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding as she walked down the hallway to the elevator. Once inside, she leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths to calm herself. Her father's threat was serious, and the implicatio NS were daunting. Without his financial support, she would need to completely restructure her life and her business plan. But strangely, along with the anxiety came a sense of liberation. For the first time, she was making choices based on her own values, not her father's expectations. Back in her room, Camille sat at the desk and opened her laptop, determined to face the practical realities of her Declaration of Independence. She pulled up her bank statements, assessing her personal finances separate from her father's accounts. The picture wasn't as dire as she had feared. She had her own savings, not enough to live extravagantly in New York, but enough to cover a few months of more modest living while she got her business off the ground. And she had her education, her skills, and her determination. By noon, she had drafted a new, leaner business plan that would require less initial capital, focusing on BYOlding partnerships with a smaller network of farms and restaurants to prove the concept before expanding. It wasn't ideal, but it was doable. She was just finishing when her phone chimed with a text from Miles. "Looking forward to our afternoon. Still good for one?" The message brought a smile to her face, despite the morning's stress. "Absolutely," she replied. "Can't wait." At 1 p.m. sharp, Camille stepped out of the hotel to find Miles waiting. Not in an Uber this time, but in an older model blue Jeep Wrangler. "My own car," he explained with a smile as he opened the passenger door for her. "Not as fancy as the town car, but it gets me where I need to go." "I like it," Camille said truthfully, climbing in. The vehicle suited him, practical, unpretentious, with a rugged charm. Miles got in beside her. "I thought we'd drive down the coast a bit. There's a place that's special to me that I want to show you. It's about an hour away, if that's okay." "Sounds perfect," Camille replied. After the confrontation with her father, a drive along the coast with Miles was exactly what she needed. As they drove out of the city, Camille told him about the morning's conversation with her father. "He threatened to cut me off financially," she explained, still processing it herself. "If I don't agree to modify my business plan to match his and Bradley's vision, he'll withdraw all support." Miles glanced at her, concern in his eyes. "That's a serious threat. How do you feel about it?" "Scared," Camille admitted, "but also relieved in a strange way. Like I've been carrying this weight of obligation and expectation that I can finally put down. Does that make sense?" Miles nodded. "It does. Sometimes what looks like security is actually a cage." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the scenery changing as they left the city behind. The coastal highway offered spectacular views of the Pacific, the water sparkling under the afternoon sun. "My father also had some choice words about you," Camille said eventually. Miles's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "I'm not surprised. Let me guess, I'm not good enough for his daughter." "Something like that," Camille confirmed. "He seemed particularly hung up on the fact that you drive for Uber." Miles laughed, though there was a hint of tension in it. "Well, I hate to disappoint him, but I'm not actually a full-time driver. It's just a way to pay bills while I finish my degree." "I told him that," Camille said. "Not that it should matter either way." Miles was quiet for a moment. "It does matter to some people, though. Social class, background, family connections, these things still define boundaries for a lot of people." "Not for me," Camille said firmly. Miles gave her a sidelong glance, his expression softening. "I'm glad to hear that. But Camille, your father's reaction is something we need to take seriously. I've been in situations before where the initial excitement of crossing social boundaries fades and reality sets in." Camille turned in her seat to face him more directly. "What do you mean?" Miles sighed. "My second year of undergrad, I dated a woman whose family was, well, not unlike yours. Old money, lots of connections. At first it was all very romantic, breaking barriers, defying expectations. But eventually the constant pressure from her family, the subtle and not so subtle reminders that I didn't fit into their world, it wore us down." "What happened?" Camille asked softly. "She chose her family's approval in the end," Miles said simply. "And I can't even blame her for it. The constant disapproval, the threat of being cut off from everything she'd known. It was a lot to ask someone to give up for a relationship that was still new." Camille reached over and placed her hand on his arm. "I'm not her, Miles." He glanced at her, a small smile touching his lips. "No, you're not. But I also don't want to be the reason you lose your relationship with your father or your financial security. That's a heavy burden to put on something as new as this." "You're not the reason," Camille insisted. "My decision to stand up for my own vision, for my business and my life, that's what's causing the rift with my father. You've just helped me find the courage to do it." Miles covered her hand with his own briefly before returning it to the steering wheel. "Still, I don't want you to make decisions in the heat of the moment that you might regret later." I appreciate that, Camille said, but I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. This isn't just rebellion or infatuation. This is me finally choosing my own path. Miles nodded, his expression serious but warm. I do trust you, and I'm here, whatever you decide. The simple declaration touched Camille deeply. Unlike her father or Bradley, who always seemed to have an agenda for her, Miles was offering support without conditions. As they continued down the coast, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Miles told her stories about his childhood adventures with his grandfather on the fishing boat, and Camille shared memories of summers spent at her family's lake house in the Adirondacks, the one place where she had felt free from her father's expectations. About an hour from the city, Miles turned onto a smaller road that wound through coastal hills. Almost there, he said with a smile. The road eventually led them to what looked like a small nature preserve. Miles parked in a gravel lot where only a few other cars were stationed. This is one of the most successful coastal restoration projects in the area, he explained as they got out of the Jeep. It's also where I'm doing most of my research. He led her along a path that wound through native coastal vegetation. As they walked, Miles pointed out different plants and explained their role in preventing erosion and supporting the local ecosystem. 5 years ago, this whole area was degraded from overuse and development, he told her. The community came together with environmental scientists to restore it. Now it's a thriving ecosystem again. The path opened onto a stunning view of a protected cove, where waves gently lapped at a crescent of sandy beach. Beyond the beach, Camille could see what looked like underwater structures extending into the bay. Those are the restored oyster reefs I was telling you about, Miles explained. They provide habitat for marine leafet and help break the force of waves before they hit the shore. His face lit up as he described the project, the challenges they had overcome, and the measurable improvements in water quality and biodiversity since the restoration began. This is the kind of work I want to do after I finish my degree, he said, helping communities protect and restore their coastal environments. It's amazing, Camille said sincerely, moved by his passion and the tangible results of the project. You can really see the difference it's making. Miles led her down to the beach, where they found a spot to sit on a large piece of driftwood. The afternoon sun was warm, but a cool breeze kept the temperature perfect. I come here when I need perspective, Miles said, looking out at the water. It reminds me that change is possible, that damaged things can be restored if enough people care and work together. Camille leaned against his shoulder, understanding why this place was special to him. Thank you for sharing it with me. Miles put his arm around her, drawing her closer. I wanted you to see it because, well, it represents what I believe in, working with nature instead of against it, taking the long view instead of looking for quick profits, building something sustainable. It's beautiful, Camille said softly, and it aligns perfectly with what I'm trying to do with my business, creating connections that support sustainability rather than exploiting resources for short-term gain. Miles turned to look at her, his expression earnest. That's why I think your idea has so much potential, Camille. It's not just about connecting buyers and sellers. It's about creating a system that supports a healthier way of producing and consuming food. Camille felt a surge of gratitude for his understanding. Bradley and her father had never truly grasped the core purpose of her platform. They had only seen its potential as a profit-making venture. Miles saw the deeper value she was trying to create. Thank you for believing in me, she said. It means more than you know. Miles tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. I believe in you because I see who you really are. Not the socialite or the heiress, but the woman with vision and heart who wants to make a genuine difference. He leaned in and kissed her gently, his lips warm against hers. Camille responded, wrapping her arms around his neck as the kiss deepened. In that moment, with the sound of waves in the background and the warmth of Miles's embrace, she felt completely at peace for the first time in years. When they finally broke apart, Miles rested his forehead against hers. I know it's crazy to feel this way so quickly, he said quietly, but there's something between us that I can't explain. It's like I've known you much longer than a few days. I feel it too, Camille admitted, like we were supposed to meet somehow. They spent the afternoon exploring the preserve, with Miles explaining the different aspects of the restoration project. His knowledge and passion for the work were evident in every word, and Camille found herself increasingly drawn to his combination of intelligence, commitment, and gentle strength. As the day began to wane, they walked hand in hand back to the jeep. Before getting in, Miles pulled Camille into his arms for another kiss, this one longer and more passionate than before. "I'm falling for you, Camille Harrington," he murmured against her lips. "Faster and deeper than I ever thought possible." "I'm falling for you too," she replied, her heart full, "and it doesn't scare me like it should." The drive back to San Francisco was quiet, a comfortable silence between them as they both processed the deepening of their connection. Miles held her hand across the console, only letting go when he needed both hands for driving. As they approached the city, Camille's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jessica, her assistant Ent. "Bradley came to the office looking for the business files. I didn't give him anything, but he was insistent. Said your father authorized him to take over certain aspects of the project. What should I tell him if he comes back?" Camille frowned, showing the message to Miles. "My father's not wasting any time," she said grimly. "What are you going to do?" Miles asked. Camille typed a quick response to Jessica. "Don't give him anything. I'll call you in the morning with more instructions. Thank you for holding firm." To Miles, she said, "I need to protect my work. If my father and Bradley are trying to access my files, they might be planning to move forward with their version of my idea, with or without my cooperation." "Can they do that legally?" Miles asked, concern in his voice. "Some of the early development was funded by my father," Camille explained. "Depending on how the agreements were worded, he might have a claim to certain aspects of the intellectual property. I need to consult a lawyer." Miles nodded. "I have a friend from undergrad who's practicing business law now. I can ask if she'd be willing to talk to you, maybe give you some initial guidance." "That would be incredibly helpful," Camille said gratefully. "Thank you." By the time they reached the hotel, Camille had formed the beginnings of a plan to protect her business concept and move forward independently. The challenges were significant, but for the first time she felt capable of facing them. Miles parked near the hotel entrance and turned to her. "Will you be okay? With everything with your father, I mean." Camille nodded. "I think so. It won't be easy, but I feel stronger than I have in a long time, more certain of what I want and what I'm willing to fight for." Miles smiled, reaching out to touch her cheek. "That strength was all A's there. You just needed to remember it." "You helped me find it again," Camille said softly. "No," Miles replied. "I just reminded you where to look." He leaned across the console and kissed her once more, a tender gesture full of affection and support. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "I'd like that," Camille replied. "But I have some things I need to take care of first. Calls to make, legal advice to seek. Could we meet in the evening?" "Of course," Miles agreed. "Just let me know when and where." Camille hesitated, then said, "Actually, would you mind if we met somewhere outside the city? I'm not trying to hide you," she added quickly, "but my father knows I'm seeing someone. And he might have people watching. I'd rather not have our time together interrupted." Miles nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know just the place. A small restaurant in Sausalito with a great view of the bay. I'll text you the details." Camille leaned in for one more quick kiss. "Thank you for today, for everything." "You never have to thank me," Miles replied simply. "Being with you is its own reward." With a final smile, Camille got out of the jeep and watched as Miles drove away, waving once before he turned the corner. Despite the challenges ahead, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Back in her hotel room, Camille kicked off her shoes and sat cross-legged on Teehee bed, her laptop open before her. She spent the next hour researching business attorneys who specialized in intellectual property and startup law, making a short list of potential consultants. She also composed a carefully worded email to the investors her father had introduced her to, explaining that she would not be moving forward with the modified version of her platform that Bradley had presented. It was a risk, burning bridges with such influential F. Igers in the tech world, but Camille felt it was important to be clear about her position. Her phone rang. It was Bradley. Camille hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Bradley." "Camille." His voice was smooth, controlled. "We need to talk. Your father tells me you're having second thoughts about the partnership." "They're not second thoughts," Camille replied firmly. "I've been clear from the beginning that I don't want to compromise the core values of my PL form. The version you presented to the investors wasn't my vision." Bradley sighed, the sound practiced and theatrical. "This is business, Camille, not a crusade. The modifications I suggested would make the platform viable in the current market." "Viable according to whose standards?" Camille challenged. "There are investors who understand and value sustainability and ethical business practices. They're the ones I want to work with. Those niche investors don't have the capital or connections to scale a business properly," Bradley said, echoing her father's words almost exactly. "I'm not interested in explosive scaling if it means compromising what makes the platform unique," Camille replied. There was a pause. Then Bradley's tone changed, becoming softer, more intimate. "Look, Cam, I know things ended badly between us personally, but that doesn't mean we can't work together professionally. We made a go. Odd team once." "No, Bradley, we didn't," Camille said, the realization crystallizing as she spoke. "You directed, and I followed. That's not a team." Another pause, longer this time. When Bradley spoke again, his voice had hardened. "Is this about that driver your father mentioned? Are you throwing away a serious business opportunity because of some fling?" Anger flared in Camille's chest. "This has nothing to do with my personal life. It's about my bus Ines and my vision for it. And the fact that both you and my father immediately assume I can't make professional decisions without being influenced by a man says a lot about how little you respect me." "That's not fair, Camille," Bradley protested. "I've always supported your ambitions." "As long as they aligned with your ideas of what I should be ambitious about," Camille retorted. "Look, Bradley, I'm not interested in arguing. I've made my decision. I'm pursuing my platform independently, with its original focus intact." "You're making a mistake," Bradley warned, "one that could cost you more than you realize." "That's a risk I'm willing to take," Camille replied. "Goodbye, Bradley." She ended the call before he could respond, her heart racing but her resolve firm. The Bradley she had once thought she loved seemed like a stranger now, controlling, condescending, unable to see her as a true equal. Her phone chimed with a text from Miles. "Just checking to make sure you're okay. Thinking about you." The simple message brought a smile to her face. "Dealing with some pushback from Bradley and my father, but standing firm. Thank you for checking in. Thinking about you, too." She had just set down her phone when there was a knock at her hotel room door. Frowning, Camille crossed the room and looked through the peephole. It was her father. With a deep breath, she opened the door. "Dad, I wasn't expecting you." Richard Harrington stood in the hallway, his expression unreadable. "May I come in?" Camille hesitated, then stepped aside. "Of course." Her father entered the room, his gaze sweeping over her open laptop and the notes scattered across the bed. "Working on a new strategy, I see." "Yes," Camille replied simply, not offering details. Richard nodded, then turned to face her directly. "I've been thinking about our conversation this morning. Perhaps we both said things in the heat of the moment that we didn't entirely mean." Camille crossed her arms. "I meant everything I said, Dad." Her father's jaw tightened briefly before he controlled his expression. "Very well, then let me be clear about where I stand. I still believe you're making a mistake, both professionally and personally, but you're an adult and I can't control your decisions." "No, you can't," Camille agreed, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "That said," Richard continued, "I'm not going to cut you off financially as I threatened this morning. You're my daughter, and I won't see you struggle unnecessarily. Your credit cards, your apartment, your basic expenses, those will continue to be covered." Camille blinked in surprise. "Thank you, that's unexpected. However," her father added, his tone sharpening, "I won't be providing any additional fund for your business venture unless you reconsider the partnership with Bradley." And I can't promise that my connections will be available to you if you pursue this course. Camille nodded, understanding the limits of his concession. That's fair. I appreciate your honesty. Richard studied her for a moment. You've changed, Camille. In just a few days, I'm not sure if it's for the better. I think it is, she replied simply. I'm finally standing up for WHAT I believe in, what I want. Isn't that what you always taught me to do? I taught you to be strategic, her father corrected, to recognize opportunity and leverage advantage, not to throw away connections over idealism. Camille smiled sadly. Maybe we learned different lessons from the same experiences. Richard sighed, an uncharacteristic display of weariness. This driver of yours, his name is Miles, Camille interrupted. Miles, then, her father conceded. What exactly are his intentions? Because from where I stand, it looks like he's latched onto a vulnerable, wealthy young woman at a moment of professional disappointment. That's not who Miles is, Camille said firmly. He's kind, intelligent, driven by his own goals and principles, and he was the first person in a long time to really see me, not as Richard Harrington's daughter or as a potential business connection, but as myself. Richard's expression softened slightly. I just don't want to see you hurt, Camille. The world can be harsh to those who lead with their hearts instead of their heads. For a moment, Camille glimpsed the father she had known as a child, protective, concerned, genuinely wanting the best for her. It made her voice gentler as she replied, I know you want what's best for me, Dad. We just disagree on what that is. Can you try to respect that, even if you don't understand it? Richard was quiet for a long moment. I can try, he finally said. But I reserve the right to say I told you so if this all falls apart. Camille couldn't help but smile. I wouldn't expect anything less. As her father turned to leave, he paused at the door. One more thing. Bradley came to me with a proposal to develop a platform similar to your original concept, but with the modifications he outlined. I told him I'd think about it. Camille said, You would back Bradley in essentially copying my idea? It wouldn't be copying if the modifications are substantial enough, Richard pointed out. And legally, given my financial involvement in the early development, you would have a claim, Camille finished, her voice tight. I understand. Richard regarded her steadily. I haven't made a decision yet. I wanted you to know where things stand. After he left, Camille sat heavily on the edge of he bed, processing the conversation. Her father wasn't cutting her off completely, which was a relief, but the threat of him backing Bradley in creating a competing platform was significant. She needed legal advice, and soon. Her phone chimed with another text from Miles. My friend Lauren, the lawyer, is available to talk tomorrow morning if that works for you. She specializes in IP and startup law. Camille texted back quickly. That would be perfect. Thank you. Setting her phone aside, she returned to her research with renewed determination. If her father and Bradley were planning to move forward with their version of her platform, she needed to act quickly to protect her original concept and find allies who shared her vision. The path ahead was challenging, but Camille felt a confidence she had never experienced before. For the first time, she was fighting for something that was truly hers, her vision, her values, her choice. And she had Miles, supportive, understanding, seeing her for who she really was. That alone gave her strength. The next morning, Camille woke early and prepared for her call with Miles's friend Lauren. She had spent hours the previous evening organizing her notes and business documents, ensuring she could clearly explain the situation and ask the right questions. At 9 a.m. sharp, her phone rang. Camille Harrington, a crisp, professional voice asked when she answered. Yes, speaking. This is Lauren Chen. Miles Thorne asked me to give you some guidance on an intellectual property matter. Lauren's advice was clear and comprehensive. After hearing Camille's explanation of the situation, she outlined several strategies for protecting the original concept, while moving forward independently. Based on what you've told me, your father may have a claim to certain aspects of the Develop Me Enter work completed while he was funding the project, Lauren explained. But the core concept, especially if you can demonstrate it was fully formed before his financial involvement, would likely remain yours. What about preventing them from creating a competing platform that's essentially the same idea with minor modifications? Camille asked. That's trickier, Lauren admitted. Ideas themselves can't be copyrighted or patented. The specific implementati, ion, code, design, branding, can be protected, but not the underlying concept. Your best strategy is to move quickly, establish your platform with its original vision intact, and build relationships with the farms and restaurants that would be your core users. By the end of the hour-long call, Camille had a clear action plan. Document everything to establish the timeline of her idea's development, file trademark protection for the name and branding, and accelerate the launch of even a basic version of the platform to establish priority in the market. I'd be happy to represent you formally if you decide to move forward, Lauren offered. Miles speaks very highly of you and your concept. Thank you, Camille replied, genuinely grateful. I'll be in touch soon about retaining your services. After ending the call, Camille felt a renewed sense of purpose. She spent the next several hours working on her revised business plan, incorporating Lauren's advice and focusing on a leaner, faster launch strategy that wouldn't require her father's financial backing. By mid-afternoon, she had also drafted emails to several of the small farm owners and restaurant chefs she had already connected with during her initial research, explaining her vision and asking if they would be interested in participating in a pilot program. Her phone chimed with a text from Miles. Still on for dinner tonight, 7 p.m. at the Sausalito place? Absolutely, Camille replied, looking forward to it. She spent another hour working, then decided to take a break and prepare for her evening with Miles. After a long shower, she chose a simple but elegant dress, emerald green, bringing out the color in her eyes. It was designer, but not ostentatiously so. Looking in the mirror, Camille realized she was dressing for herself and for Miles, not for the impression she would make on others. It was a subtle but significant shift. At 6:30 p.m., she received a text from Miles. Running about 15 minutes late, got held up at the lab. So sorry. No problem at all, she texted back. Take your time, I'll be ready whenever you get here. Camille used the extra time to make a few more notes on her business plan, energized by the progress she had made during the day. When her phone chimed again at 6:50 p.m., she expected another update from Miles. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. I think you should know who you are really getting involved with. Check your email. Frowning, Camille opened her email app. There was a new message from an anonymous address with the subject line, "The truth about Miles Thorne." Her finger hovered over the email, hesitant. It felt like an invasion of Miles's privacy. To read something clearly meant to discredit him. But if there was something important, she should know. Taking a deep breath, Camille opened the email. It contained a series of links to news articles and social media posts, along with a brief message. Before you trust him completely, you should know about his past. The first link led to a local news article from 3 years ago. Environmental activist arrested at corporate development protest. The article included a photo of Miles, looking younger but unmistakable being led away in handcuffs along with several other protesters who had chained themselves to construction equipment at a coastal development site. The second link was to a society page from 2 years ago, showing Miles at a charity gala with a beautiful woman identified as Catherine Westfield, daughter of investment banker James Westfield, the same James Westfield who had been at the lunch meeting with her father and Bradley. The third link was to a blog post written by someone claiming to be Catherine Westfield's friend, describing how Miles had used her connections to advance his academic career and environmental causes before their relationship ended. Camille's stomach tightened as she read through the material. None of it was particularly damning. Environmental activism was consistent with what she knew of Miles, and he had mentioned dating someone from a wealthy family during his undergraduate years, but the timing and source of the information were suspicious. Her phone rang. It was Miles. "Hey," she answered, trying to keep her voice neutral. "I'm outside," Miles said, sounding slightly out of breath. "Sorry again for being late. The experiment I was running took longer than expected to complete." "No problem," Camille replied. "I'll be right down." She hesitated, then closed the email without reading further. Whatever this was, an attempt by her father or Bradley to drive a wedge between her and Miles. She wouldn't let it work. If there was anything important in Miles's past that she should know, Camille grabbed her purse and headed downstairs, pushing the anonymous email to the back of her mind. She would ask Miles about it directly if necessary, but she wouldn't let someone's attempt to cause trouble come between them. Miles was waiting outside, leaning against his Jeep. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. He was dressed more formally than usual, dark slacks and a navy button-down shirt that complemented his warm brown skin. "You look beautiful," he said, coming forward to greet her with a gentle kiss. "So do you," Camille replied, meaning it. There was something about Miles that went beyond conventional good looks, a quiet confidence, a genuine warmth that drew her to him. The drive to Sausalito was pleasant, with the setting sun casting golden light across the bay as they crossed the Golden Gate Bridge. Miles told her about his day at the university, the progress on his research project, and a promising conversation with his academic advisor about future funding. Camille listened, asking questions and sharing in his enthusiasm, but part of her mind kept returning to the anonymous email. Should she mention it? Or would that give it more importance than it deserved? The restaurant was exactly as Miles had described, a small, elegant place perched on a hillside, with a stunning view of the bay and the San Francisco skyline in the distance. They were seated at a window table, the lights of the city beginning to twinkle as darkness fell. "This is beautiful," Camille said, looking out at the view. "I thought you'd like it," Miles replied. "It's one of my favorite places for a special occasion." "And what are we celebrating?" Camille asked with a smile. Miles reached across the table to take her hand. "Being here together, finding each other in the most unexpected way." The simple sincerity in his voice touched Camille deeply. This was why the anonymous email felt so wrong. It contradicted everything she had come to know about Miles. He was honest, straightforward, without pretense or hidden agenda. They ordered wine and appetizers, falling into easy conversation. Camille told him about her productive call with Lauren and her plans to move forward with her business independently. "I've drafted emails to several small farms and restaurants I researched earlier, asking if they'd be interested in participating in a pilot program," SHE explained. "It's a smaller scale than I originally planned, but it would allow me to prove the concept without requiring major investment." "That's a smart approach," Miles said, his eyes warm with approval. "Start small, build relationships, demonstrate value, then scale gradually." "Exactly," Camille agreed. "And Lauren suggested I could seek out impact investors once I have some initial results to show." Their main courses arrived: grilled salmon for Miles, seared scallops for Camille. As they ate, Camille found herself studying Miles, trying to reconcile the man across from her with the activist in handcuffs from the news article. "Is everything okay?" Miles asked, noticing her thoughtful gaze. "You seem a little distracted." Camille hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I received a strange email just before you picked me up, anonymous with links to articles and social media posts about you." Miles's expression shifted, surprise followed by wariness. "What kind of articles?" "One about you being arrested at a protest against a coastal development," Camille said carefully. "Another showing you at some gala with Catherine Westfield. There was also a blog post claiming you used her connections to advance your career." Miles set down his fork, his expression serious. "I see. And who sent this email?" "I don't know," Camille admitted. The address was anonymous, and the message just said I should know the truth about you before trusting you completely." "Your father?" Miles suggested. "Or Bradley?" "Possibly," Camille agreed. The timing seemed suspicious. Miles was quiet for a moment, then looked at her directly. "What do you want to know, Camille? I'm an open book." The simple offer reassured her. "Were you arrested at a protest?" "Yes," Miles confirmed without hesitation. 3 years ago, a development company was trying to build luxury condos on a fragile coastal habitat. The proper environmental impact studies hadn't been done. Permits were rushed through with questionable political connections. A group of us from the Environmental Science Department organized a protest. When they brought in construction equipment, despite a pending legal challenge, some of us chained ourselves to the bulldozers. What happened after? Camille asked. We were arrested for trespassing, Miles explained. But the publicity led to a review of the permits, and eventually the project was required to undergo a full environmental assessment, which found significant issues. The development was scaled back and redesigned to protect the most sensitive areas. He smiled slightly. I don't regret it. It was worth a night in jail and a misdemeanor charge that was later dropped. Camille nodded, unsurprised by this explanation. It aligned perfectly with the Miles she had come to know, principled, willing to stand up for what he believed in. And Catherine Westfield? She asked. Miles sighed. That's a more complicated story. Yes, I dated Catherine for about a year during my undergraduate studies. She is from a wealthy, connected family. Her father is an investment banker. James Westfield, Camille said. He was at the lunch meeting with my father and Bradley. Miles's eyebrows rose. That's quite a coincidence. Is it? Camille asked. Or did my father specifically seek him out after learning about your connection to his daughter? It's possible, Miles acknowledged. The Westfields are well connected in both financial and social circles. Your father and Catherine's might have known each other even before this. What about the claim that you used her connections? Camille asked, feeling uncomfortable but needing to address it. Miles ran a hand over his face. That's Catherine's friend Victoria's interpretation. The reality is more nuanced. Catherine introduced me to people in her father's circle who were interested in environmental causes. Yes, partly to help my academic networking, but also because I was passionate about projects they wanted to support. It was mutually beneficial, not exploitative. What happened between you two? Camille asked softly. What? So I told you before, Miles replied. The pressure from her family became too much. They liked me as Catherine's interesting, intelligent boyfriend from a different background, good for her to experience diversity before settling down with someone from their world. But when things got serious, when we started talking about a future together, the subtle disapproval became not so subtle. He looked out at the view for a moment before continuing. Catherine tried to stand up to them at first, but eventually the constant tension, the threats about her trust fund, her place in their world, it wore her down. We broke up about 2 years ago. I'm sorry, Camille said, reaching across the table to take his hand. Miles squeezed her fingers gently. Don't be. It was painful at the time, but it taught me a lot. About myself, about relationships, about the realities of crossing certain social boundaries. He looked at her intently. Which is why I've been cautious with you, Camille. I know what it's like to be caught between worlds, to have someone you care about pressured by family and social expectations. I don't want to put you in that position. I appreciate your concern, Camille said, but I'm not Catherine, and my relationship with my father is complicated, but different. I've always had my own mind, even when I wasn't brave enough to speak it. Miles nodded, a small smile returning to his face. I've noticed that about you. It's one of the things I admire most. So, Camille said, is there anything else in this mysterious email that I should know about? Any other skeletons in your closet? Miles chuckled, the tension breaking. I got a speeding ticket last year, and I'm terrible at remembering birthdays. That's about the extent of my dark secrets. They both laughed, and Camille felt the knot of worry in her chest dissolve. Whatever her father or Bradley had hoped to accomplish with that email had failed. If anything, Miles's honest responses had only deepened her trust in him. As they finished their meal and shared a dessert, the conversation returned to lighter topics. Miles told her about his plans to visit his mother the following weekend. She's been asking about you, he admitted with a slightly embarrassed smile. I may have mentioned you once or twice in our calls. Only good things, I hope, Camille teased. The best, Miles assured her. She's curious about the woman who's had me smiling like a fool for days. The idea that Miles talked about her to his mother, that she had become important enough in his life to mention to the person he clearly respected most, sent a warm glow through Camille. I'd like to meet her someday, she said, meaning it. Miles's smile widened. I'd like that too, When the time is right. After dinner, they walked along the Sausalito waterfront, hand in hand, enjoying the lights reflected on the bay and the fresh night air. Despite the anonymous email and her ongoing concerns about her father and Bradley's intentions, Camille felt a deep sense of contentment. "Thank you for being honest with me," she said, as they paused to look out at the water. "About Catherine, about the protest, all of it." Miles turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I never want to hide anything from you, Camille. What we're building, whatever it becomes, I want it to be based on truth." "Me too," she replied softly. He pulled her gently into his arms, and she went willingly, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong like everything else about him. "Whatever your father or Bradley or anyone else tries to do," Miles murmured against her hair, "we'll face it together, if that's what you want." Camille looked up at him, her heart full. "It is, more than anything." The kiss they shared then was different from their previous ones, deeper, more certain, a promise rather than a question. When they finally broke apart, Miles rested his forehead against hers. "It's getting late. I should get you back to the hotel." The drive back to San Francisco was quiet, a comfortable silence between them as they both processed the evening's revelations and the strengthening of their connection. Miles held her hand across the console whenever he could, as if needing the physical reassurance of her presence. At the hotel, he walked her to the entrance. "I have to be at the university early tomorrow for a presentation," he said reluctantly, "but I'd like to see you tomorrow evening if you're free." "I'd like that," Camille replied. "I have some calls scheduled with potential pilot program participants, but I should be done by 6. "Perfect," Miles said. "I'll pick you up at 7. I know a great little place in North Beach." "It's a date," Camille agreed. He kissed her goodnight, a lingering touch that left her slightly breathless. "Sweet dreams, Camille." "Sweet dreams, Miles," she echoed, watching as he walked back to his Jeep. Inside the hotel, Camille checked her phone and found several emails from farm owners responding to her outreach, all positive, expressing interest in her platform concept. The encouraging responses boosted her confidence even further. She was just getting ready for bed when her phone rang. It was a New York number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Camille Harrington?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "This is Victoria Sloan. I believe you received an email earlier with some information about Miles Thorne." Camille tensed. "You sent that email?" "Yes," Victoria confirmed. "I'm a friend of Catherine Westfield's. I thought you should know what you're getting into with Miles." "Why would you care who I date?" Camille asked bluntly. There was a pause. "James Westfield, Catherine's father, is an associate of your father's. When he mentioned that Richard Harrington's daughter was involved with Miles, Catherine was concerned. She thought you should know about his pattern." "Pattern?" Camille repeated, her voice cooling. "Miles has a history of attaching himself to wealthy, connected women," Victoria said. "First Catherine, now you. It's quite a coincidence that of all the Uber passengers in San Francisco, he happened to form a connection with Richard Harrington's daughter." "It wasn't a coincidence," Camille replied evenly. "It was kindness. He saw someone who was hurting and offered comfort without expecting anything in return. Something that seems to be in short supply in our social circle." "You've known him for what, a week?" Victoria pressed. Catherine thought the same thing, that he was different, genuine. But eventually she realized he was using her connections to advance his career and his causes. "Did Catherine tell you that?" Camille asked. "Or is that your interpretation?" Victoria hesitated. "Catherine is too kind to say it directly, but I saw how he operated." "I appreciate your concern," Camille said, keeping her voice level with effort. "But I trust my own judgment about Miles." "Your father and Bradley are worried about you," Victoria continued, changing tactics. "They think you're making decisions based on emotion rather than reason." Camille's suspicions crystallized. "So my father put you up to this, or was it Bradley?" "No one put me up to anything," Victoria insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "I'm calling as a concerned friend of Catherine's. A friend I've never met, calling about a woman I've never met, regarding a man you've probably never met outside of social events," Camille observed. That's quite a chain of concern. I'm just trying to help, Victoria said stiffly. No, you're not, Camille replied, her patience exhausted. You're trying to interfere in my personal life at the behest of my father or my ex or both. Please don't contact me again. She ended the call, anger and disappointment churning in her stomach. Her father's tactics were becoming increasingly transparent and increasingly desperate. Her phone chimed with a text. Expecting more drama, she was relieved to see Miles's name. Made it home safe. Just wanted to say goodnight again, and that I'm grateful for your trust tonight. Sweet dreams, Camille. The simple message washed away the negative feelings from Victoria's call. Camille, he texted back, sweet dreams to you too. Thank you for your honesty. Looking forward to tomorrow. With a renewed sense of determination, Camille turned off her phone and went to bed, ready to face whatever challenges the next day might bring. The following morning, Camille woke early and immediately checked her emails. More responses from farms and restaurants had come in overnight, nearly all expressing interest in her platform concept. The enthusiastic feedback energized her, confirming that her original vision resonated with the people who would actually use the service. She spent the morning on video calls with 3 of the most promising farm owners, discussing their needs and challenges in connecting with restaurants. Their insights were invaluable, highlighting aspects of the distribution problem she hadn't fully considered and suggesting features that would make her platform more useful to them. By noon, Camille had compiled enough feedback to begin refining her business plan. She ordered room service for lunch and worked straight through, adjusting her pitch deck to better emphasize the practical benefits for both farms and restaurants. Her phone rang mid-afternoon. It was Lauren Chen, the lawyer. Camille, I've been reviewing the documents you sent over, Lauren said after their initial greetings. I have some concerns about the funding agreement you signed with your father. Camille's stomach tightened. What kind of concerns? There's language in here that could be interpreted to give him partial ownership of any business concept developed during the funding period, Lauren explained. It's not definitively in his favor, but it's ambiguous enough to cause problems if he decides to pursue it. Could he use it to back Bradley in creating a competing platform? Camille asked, voicing her biggest fear. Potentially, Lauren confirmed, but there are countermeasures we could take. If you can demonstrate that the core concept predated the funding agreement, that would strengthen your position. Camille thought for a moment. I have dated journal entries and early drafts of the business plan from before my father got involved. Would those help? Absolutely, Lauren said. Send those over as soon as possible. In the meantime, I'd recommend accelerating. Your launch timeline. Establishing market presence first would give you another advantage if this becomes a legal battle. After ending the call, Camille felt a renewed sense of urgency. She needed to move quickly to protect her concept and bring it to market before her father and Bradley could launch their version. She was deep in work when her phone rang again. This time it was Jessica, her assistant in New York. Camille, I thought you should know. Bradley came to the office again, Jessica said, sounding concerned. He had a lawyer with him this time, demanding access to all files related to the platform development. What did you tell him? Camille asked, her heart racing. That I needed direct authorization from you. As the company founder, Jessica replied. He wasn't happy. Said something about your father having legal authority as the primary investor. You did exactly right, Camille assured her. I'm working with a lawyer here to clarify the ownership issues. In the meantime, don't give Bradley or anyone else access to any files without explicit confirmation from me. Of course, Jessica agreed. But Camille, it might be a good idea for you to come back to New York. RK soon. Things are getting complicated here. Camille sighed. Jessica was right. She needed to return to New York to deal with the situation directly. But the thought of leaving San Francisco, of leaving Miles, sent a pang through her chest. I'll book a flight for the day after tomorrow, she decided. That will give me time to finalize some things here and prepare for the confrontation in New York. After ending the call, Camille sat on the edge of the bed, emotions churning. She had known returning to her life in New York was inevitable, but the reality of it, especially now that she had found Miles, was harder than anticipated. Her phone chimed with a text from Miles. Finished my presentation early. Any chance you could meet sooner than 7? No pressure if you're busy. The message brought a smile to her face despite her troubled thoughts. "I'd love to. I'm free whenever you are," she texted back. "How about at 5:30? I'll pick you up at the hotel," came his swift reply. "Perfect, see you then," Camille responded, already looking forward to seeing him. She returned to her work with renewed focus, determined to accomplish as much as possible before leaving for New York. By late afternoon, she had drafted a simplified version of her platform that could be launched quickly, focusing on the core functionality of connecting farms directly with restaurants. At 5:15, she began getting ready for her evening with Miles, choosing a casual but pretty sundress and taking extra care with her appearance. The woman who looked back at her from the mirror seemed different from the one who had arrived in San Francisco less than a week ago, more confident, more authentic, her eyes brighter with purpose and hope. At precisely 5:30, the hotel phone rang to announce Miles's arrival. Camille grabbed her purse and headed downstairs, her heart lifting at the thought of seeing him. He was waiting in the lobby, his face lighting up when he spotted her. "Hey, beautiful," he greeted her with a warm kiss. "Hey yourself," Camille replied, taking his offered hand. "You're looking very pleased with yourself. Did your presentation go well?" "Better than well," Miles said as they walked out to his Jeep. "The conservation group loved it. They want to fund an expansion of the restoration project, including some of my research proposals." "Miles, that's wonderful," Camille exclaimed, genuinely happy for him. "Congratulations." "Thank you," he replied, his smile wide. "It's a major step forward for my work. But enough about me, how was your day?" As they drove through the city, Camille told him about the positive responses from farms and restaurants, but also about the concerning conversation with Lauren regarding her father's potential legal claim to HER business concept. "Lauren thinks I should accelerate the launch timeline," she explained, "establish market presence before my father and Bradley can move forward with their version." Miles nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. First mover advantage is significant, especially when building relationships with suppliers and customers. The challenge is," Camille continued, "I need to return to New York to handle the situation there. Bradley's been pressuring my assistant for access to business files, and things are getting complicated." Miles's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "When would you leave?" "The day after tomorrow," Camille said quietly. "I wish I had more time here, but you need to protect your business," Miles finished for her. "I understand." There was a note of resignation in his voice that made Camille's heart ache. "Miles, this doesn't change anything between us." "Oh, at least not for me." He glanced at her, his expression softening. "Not for me either, but long distance isn't easy, especially for something so new." "No, it's not," Camille agreed. "But some things are worth the effort." Miles reached across to take her hand, squeezing it gently. "Yes, they are." Instead of heading toward North Beach as planned, Miles turned the Jeep toward the coast highway. "Change of plans?" Camille asked. "If this is our second Tule Saint night together for a while, I want to make it special," Miles explained. "I thought we could go back to the first place I took you, the cliffside overlook. Watch the sunset, then have dinner afterward. Is that okay?" "It's perfect," Camille replied softly, touched by his thoughtfulness. The drive along the coast was beautiful, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across the water. They talked easily about their respective days, their plans and hopes, deliberately avoiding the looming separation. At the overlook, Miles parked and came around to open Camille's door. They walked hand in hand to the railing, looking out at the vast expanse of ocean stretching to the horizon. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "This is where it all began," Miles said, his voice quiet as he stood behind Camille, his arms wrapped around her waist. "Where I first saw the real you, beneath all the defenses." Camille leaned back against him, feeling safe and cherished in his embrace. "You saw me when I couldn't even see myself clearly. You reminded me of who I used to be, who I could be again." Miles rested his chin gently on the top of her head. "You were always that person, Camille. You just needed to remember." They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the sun sank lower, its reflection creating a pathway of light across the water. The moment felt sacred somehow, a pause in time that Camille knew she would remember forever. "I have something for you," Miles said eventually, turning her to face him. "A gift before you go back to New York." From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. Opening it, he revealed a delicate silver necklace with a pendant, a small, beautifully crafted seashell. "It's not expensive," he said almost apologetically, "but I wanted you to have something to remind you of the ocean, of this place, of us." Tears pricked at Camille's eyes as she looked at the thoughtful gift. "It's beautiful, Miles. I love it." He took the necklace from the box and moved behind her to fasten it around her neck. The pendant rested just below her collarbone, catching the last rays of the setting sun. "Perfect," Miles murmured, turning her to face him again. "Just like you." Camille reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "I'm going to miss you so much." "I'll miss you too," Miles replied. "But this isn't an ending, Camille. Not unless you want it to be." "I don't," she said firmly. "Not at all." "Then it's just a pause," Miles assured her. "A comma, not a period." He leaned down to kiss her, a tender gesture that deepened as Camille responded, pouring all her emotions into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both slig. Tally breathless, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky awash in fading color. "We should go to dinner," Miles said reluctantly. "I made reservations at a place near here." "Or," Camille suggested, "we could get takeout and go back to my hotel room. Spend our time together somewhere more private." Miles's eyes darkened with understanding and desire. "Are you sure?" "Very sure," Camille replied, holding his gaze. "I want to be with you, Miles. Not just dinner in a restaurant, but really with you." Miles took a deep breath, then nodded. "I'd like that too, very much." The drive back to the city seemed both too long and too short, charged with anticipation and the bittersweet knowledge of their limited time together. They stopped for takeout from a small Italian place Miles knew, then continued to the hotel. In her room, they ate at the small table by the window, sharing bites of each other's faux ode and talking softly about everything and nothing. There was an intimacy to the simple meal that surpassed any fancy restaurant experience Camille had ever had. Afterward, they moved to the small sofa, Miles's arm around Camille's shoulders as they continued their conversation, touching on hopes and dreams, fears and insecurities. In those quiet moments of sharing, Camille felt closer to Miles than she had to anyone in her life. When words finally gave way to kisses, when kisses deepened into more, it felt like the natural progression of their connection, tender, passionate, a physical expression of what had been building between them since that first night in his car. Later, lying in Miles's arms, Camille traced patterns on his chest, memorizing the feel of him, the sound of his heartbeat, the way his hand moved gently up and down her back. "I don't want to leave," she whispered into the darkness. Miles tightened his arms around her. "I don't want you to go, but your business needs you. Your life is in New York." "For now," Camille said, "but lives can change. Businesses can relocate." Miles pulled back slightly to look at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know exactly what the future holds," Camille replied honestly. "But I know I want you in it. And if that means adjusting my plans, finding a way to split time between New York and San Francisco, or eventually relocating completely, I'm open to all of it." Miles kissed her forehead gently. "Let's take it one step at a time. First, you go to New York and secure your business. We'll figure out the rest as we go." "Promise you won't forget me while I'm gone?" Camille asked, only half joking. Miles chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. "As if that were possible. You've changed my life, Camille Harrington. There's no going back from that." They fell asleep entwined, the city lights creating patterns across the ceiling, the sound of their breathing a gentle rhythm in the quiet room. The next day, their last full day together before Camille's return to New York, was filled with both work and pleasure. They spent the morning separately, Camille finalizing her accelerated launch plan with Lauren's legal guidance, Miles completing some research at the university. In the afternoon, they met at G. Olden Gate Park, walking hand in hand through the Japanese tea garden and the conservatory of flowers. There was a bittersweet quality to their time together, each moment precious because of the impending separation. In the evening, Miles took Camille to dinner at the small seafood restaurant where his grandfather had once taken him, introducing her to the owner and several of the staff who knew him well. It felt like being welcomed into a part of his life, a gesture of inclusion that touched Camille deeply. "My mother wants to meet you before you leave," Miles mentioned over dessert. "She invited us for breakfast tomorrow if you're interested. She lives in Oakland, not far from the airport." "I'd love to meet her," Camille replied instantly, though a flutter of nerves accompanied the words. Miles clearly adored his mother, and her opinion would matter to him. "She'll love you," Miles assured her, reading her expression. How could she not? Their last night together was even more intense than the previous one, each touch, each kiss carrying the weight of their impending separation. Afterward, lying in the darkness, they made plans for phone calls and video chats for Miles to visit New York when his research schedule allowed, for Camille to return to San Francisco as soon as the situation with her business stabilized. "It won't be easy," Miles acknowledged, "but nothing worth having ever is." "We'll make it work," Camille promised, believing it with her whole heart. Morning came too soon. They drove to Oakland in Miles's Jeep, Camille's luggage in the back for their trip to the airport afterward. Evelyn Thorne lived in a modest but beautifully maintained house on a tree-lined street. She was waiting on the porch when they arrived, a tall, elegant woman with Miles's warm brown eyes and confident bearing. "So, this is the famous Camille," she said, coming forward to embrace her son, and then, to Camille's surprise, Camille herself. "Miles has told me so much about you. All good, I promise." "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Thorne," Camille replied, immediately charmed by the woman's warmth. "Evelyn, please," she insisted. "Mrs. Thorne was my mother-in-law, and we never did get along." Breakfast was a delightful affair, with Evelyn serving homemade waffles and pie fruit on the sunny back patio. She asked Camille thoughtful questions about her business concept and her plans in New York, listening with genuine interest to the answers. "It's a wonderful idea," she said of the farm-to-restaurant platform, connecting people who care about quality and sustainability, creating relationships rather than just transactions. The world needs more of that approach. "That's exactly it," Camille agreed, surprised and pleased by Evelyn's immediate understanding. "It's about relationships and values, not just efficiency and profit." "Like most worthwhile things in life," Evelyn said with a meaningful glance between Camille and Miles. As they were finishing breakfast, Evelyn disappeared into the house and returned with a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. "A going-away present," she explained, handing it to Camille. "Something to remind you of California while you're back east." Touched by the gesture, Camille carefully unwrapped the package to find a small, framed watercolor painting of the coastline, clearly done by a skilled hand. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "Did you paint this?" Evelyn nodded, looking pleased. "It's a hobby of mine. That's the view from a spot near Half Moon Bay, one of my favorite places. Miles tells me you have a special connection to the ocean." "I do," Camille confirmed, running her fingers gently over the painted waves. "Thank you so much. I'll treasure it." As they prepared to leave for the airport, Evelyn pulled Camille aside for a moment. "He cares for you very deeply," she said quietly. "More than I've seen him care for anyone in a long time." "I care for him too," Camille replied. "Very much." Evelyn studied her face, then nodded, apparently satisfied with what she saw. "Good. Then you'll find a way to make it work, despite the distance and the differences." "We will," Camille promised, meaning it with all her heart. The drive to the airport was quiet, both Camille and Miles lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the departure area, Miles found a temporary parking spot and helped Camille with her luggage. Standing at the curb facing each other, the moment of goodbye finally upon them, Camille felt her throat tighten with emotion. "This isn't goodbye," Miles said softly, taking her hands in his. "It's just, see you soon." "See you soon," Camille echoed, trying to smile through the tears that threatened. Miles reached up to touch the seashell pendant at her throat. "Remember who you are, Camille. The woman I met at the ocean that first night. Strong, genuine, full of passion and purpose. Don't let New York or your father or Bradley make you forget again. I won't, Camille promised. You've helped me remember what matters, what I truly want. I won't lose sight of that again. Miles pulled her into his arms, holding her close. Call me when you land, no matter how late. I will, Camille assured him, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of his arms around her. Their final kiss was tender, a promise rather than a farewell. When they broke apart, Miles touched her cheek gently. You know where to find me, he said softly. I'll be waiting. With one last squeeze of his hand, Camille turned and walked into the terminal, forcing herself not to look back. She knew if she did, her resolve might falter, and she had responsibilities to face in New York. On the plane, settled into her first-class seat, Camille touched the seashell pendant at her throat and looked out the window as San Francisco fell away beneath her. She was returning to New York physically, but she was not the same woman who had left it less than a week ago. She had found something in San Francisco, not just Miles, but herself. Her true self, her authentic voice, her courage to stand up for what she believed in. And no matter what challenges awaited her in New York, she would face them with this newfound strength. 2 weeks later, Camille sat in her New York apartment, surrounded by legal documents and business plans. The confrontation with her father and Bradley had been difficult but necessary. With Lauren Chen's help, she had established her legal claim to the original business concept, presenting the dated journal entries and early drafts that predated her father's financial involvement. The documentation wasn't ironclad, but it was enough to make Richard Harrington hesitate about backing Bradley's competing platform. It would be a messy legal battle, Lauren had explained during a meeting with all parties present, one that would generate negative publicity for everyone involved, especially if it became known that a father was essentially trying to appropriate his daughter's business idea. The implied threat had its intended effect. Richard, always conscious of his public image, had grudgingly backed down. You're making a mistake going it alone, he told Camille afterward, but it's your mistake to make. Thank you for understanding, Dad, Camille had replied, choosing to focus on the concession rather than the criticism. Bradley had been less gracious, accusing Camille of emotional decision-making and warning her that she would regret rejecting his improvements to her concept. She had simply wished him well and walked away, feeling lighter with each step. Now, 2 weeks after returning to New York, Camille was making rapid progress on her business. 3 farms and 5 restaurants had agreed to participate in the pilot program, which would launch the following month. An impact investment fund focused on sustainable food systems had expressed serious interest after reviewing her business plan, with a preliminary meeting scheduled for the following week. Most importantly, she had found her voice. In business meetings, in conversations with her father, in every aspect of her life. The woman who had once sought approval and validation from others was gone, replaced by someone who trusted her own judgment and stood firm in her convictions. Through it all, Miles had been her rock. They spoke every day, sometimes just brief check-ins, other times long conversations late into the night. The distance was hard, but it had also allowed their connection to deepen in different ways, through words and shared experiences, despite the physical separation. Miles had listened to her frustrations about the legal confrontation, offered thoughtful advice about her business development, and reminded her of her strength whenever she felt overwhelmed. In turn, Camille had supported him through a chow-lenging phase of his research project and celebrated when he received additional funding for his coastal restoration work. Tonight, she was preparing for their regular evening video call when her phone rang. It was her father. "Hello, Dad," she answered, steeling herself for another lecture about her business choices. "Camille," Richard Harrington's voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been reviewing the latest draft of your business plan that you sent over." "And?" Camille prompted when he paused. "It's quite impressive," her father admitted. "The adjustments you've made to scale gradually while maintaining your core values show real strategic thinking. And the interest from Green Future Fund is significant. They're selective about their investments." Camille sat down, surprised by the positive assessment. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot coming from you." I still think Bradley's approach will have yielded faster growth, Richard couldn't resist adding. But I can see the merit in your vision, a slower build with stronger foundations. Exactly, Camille agreed, choosing not to argue about Bradley's version. Sustainability isn't just about the products, it's about the business model itself. There was another pause. Your mother would be proud of you, Richard said finally, his voice softening. She always believed in doing business differently, more humanely, I suppose. The unexpected mention of her mother brought tears to Camille's eyes. I think about her a lot lately, she admitted, wondering what she would think of my choices. She would approve, Richard said with certainty. She always said you had her heart and my head, the best combination. The conversation shifted to practical matters about the business, but something had changed between them. A small step toward mutual respect, perhaps even understanding. After ending the call with her father, Camille checked the time. Almost 7. Miles would be calling soon. She moved to the window of her apartment, looking out at the New York skyline as twilight settled over the city. Her phone chimed with a text message. Expecting Miles, she was surprised to see Jessica's name instead. Check your email. Green Future Fund wants to move up the meeting to this Friday. They're very interested. Excited, Camille opened her email to find the confirmation from the investment fund. This was a major step forward for her business, potentially providing the capital she needed to launch beyond the pilot program, without depending on her father's support. She was composing a reply when her phone rang with a video call from Miles. Smiling, she answered immediately. Hey, beautiful, Miles greeted her, his warm smile filling the screen. He was in his appartement, books and research papers visible in the background. Hey yourself, Camille replied, her heart lifting at the sight of him. I have amazing news. Green Future Fund moved up our meeting to this Friday. They seem really interested in the concept. That's fantastic, Camille, Miles exclaimed, his face lighting up with genuine happiness for her. I told you they'd see the value in your approach. Your professor's introduction definitely helped, Camille acknowledged. I can't thank you enough for that connection. Miles waved away the thanks. All I did was make an introduction. The concept and your presentation did the rest. They talked for nearly an hour, sharing the events of their days. Miles told her about a breakthrough in his research project, and Camille recounted her surprising conversation with her father. That sounds like progress, Miles observed. Small steps, but in the right direction. It is, Camille agreed. I think he's finally starting to see me as an adult with my own vision, not just as his daughter who needs guidance. As their conversation continued, Camille found herself missing Miles with an intensity that surprised her. The video calls were wonderful, but they weren't the same as being together, feeling his arms around her, seeing his smile in person. I miss you, she said suddenly, interrupting a discussion about his research. So much. Miles' expression softened. I miss you too, every day. It's only been 2 weeks, but it feels like so much longer, Camille said. I keep turning to tell you something, only to remember you're 3,000 miles away. I know exactly what you mean, Miles replied. Yesterday I actually drove to the cliffside overlook just to feel connected to you somehow. The image of Miles at their special place thinking of her sent warmth through Camille's chest. I wear your necklace every day, she told him, touching the seashell pendant that had become a talisman of sorts. It helps me remember who I am now. Miles smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. When do you think you might be able to visit? Or would it be easier for me to come to New York? I've been thinking about that, Camille said. Once the meeting with Green Future Fund is done, I should have a clearer timeline for the business. Maybe I could come out the weekend after next. I'd need to return for the pilot launch, but we could have a few days together. I'd like that, Miles said, his expression brightening. A lot. Their conversation continued for another half hour, making plans for her visit, sharing hopes and small concerns, the easy intimacy between them bridging the physical distance. When they finally said goodnight, Camille felt both comforted by their connection and acutely aware of the challenges they faced. Long-distance relationships were difficult under the best circumstances. Add in their different worlds, her business commitments, his academic career, The path forward wasn't simple, but as she got ready for bed, touching the seashell pendant at her throat, Camille felt certain of one thing. What she and Miles had found was worth fighting for, worth figuring out, worth any compromise necessary to nurture and protect. The meeting with Green Future Fund exceeded Camille's expectations. The investors were enthusiastic about her platform's focus on sustainability and ethical business practices, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated their understanding of her vision. "We like that you're building something with purpose beyond profit," the lead investor told her. "Your platform creates value for small farms, restaurants, and ultimately consumers who care about sustainable food systems." By the end of the meeting, they had made a preliminary commitment to provide the capital Camille needed for her initial launch, with the possibility of additional funding as the platform grew. "We believe in starting small and building strong foundations," the investor explained. "Your approach aligns perfectly with our investment philosophy." Leaving the meeting, Camille felt a surge of validation. Her vision, unchanged from its original purpose, despite pressure from her father and Bradley, had found its audience. People who understood and valued what she was trying to create. She immediately called Miles to share the good news. "I knew they'd see what I see in you," he said, pride evident in his voice. "A visionary who understands that business can be a force for positive change." "I couldn't have done it without you," Camille told him. "Your support, your belief in me, it made all the difference." "You did the hard work," Miles insisted. "I just reminded you of what you already knew." They finalized plans for her visit the following weekend. Camille would fly to San Francisco on Friday evening and stay until Tuesday morning, giving them 3 full days together before she needed to return to New York for final preparations before the pilot launch. The days leading up to her trip passed in a blur of activity. Camille worked with her small team to prepare the platform for the pilot, conducted final interviews with participating farms and restaurants, and handled the paperwork for the Green Future Fund investment. By the time she boarded her flight to San Francisco on Friday evening, she was exhausted but exhilarated. Her business was on track, her vision intact, and she was heading toward the man who had helped her remember who she truly was. As the plane began its descent into San Francisco, Camille looked out the window at the city lights spread below, her heart beating faster at the thought of seeing Miles in just a short time. She touched the seashell pendant at her throat, a smile curving her lips. Miles was waiting at the arrival gate, scanning the crowd of passengers. When he spotted her, his face lit up with a smile that made Camille's heart skip. She quickened her pace, moving toward him with single-minded purpose. When she reached him, Miles opened his arms, and Camille stepped into his embrace without hesitation, the feeling of coming home washing over her. He held her tightly, his face buried in her hair, neither of them speaking for a long moment. "Hi," Camille finally said, looking up at him with a smile. "Hi yourself," Miles replied, his eyes warm with emotion. "Welcome back." They collected her luggage and headed to the parking garage where Miles had left his Jeep. The drive to his apartment was filled with conversation, both of them eager to share details that hadn't made it into their daily calls and texts. Miles had prepared a late dinner, simple but thoughtful. Grilled salmon, fresh vegetables, and a bottle of wine from a local vineyard. They ate at his small dining table, their knees touching, the conversation flowing easily between them. Afterward, they sat on his couch, Camille curled against Hayes' side, content in a way she hadn't been since leaving San Francisco. "I have something to tell you," Miles said after a comfortable silence. "Something I've been considering but wanted to discuss in person." Camille looked up at him, curious. "What is it?" "I've been offered a research position with a coastal conservation group in New York," he said. "It would start after I complete my master's next semester." Camille sat up straighter, surprise and hope coursing through her. "In New York? You'd be moving to New York?" Miles nodded, watching her reaction carefully. "It's a good opportunity professionally. The group does important work protecting the Atlantic coastline, and they'd fund my continued research." "Miles, that's wonderful," Camille said sincerely. "But is it what you want? Would you be leaving opportunities here?" "There are good opportunities on both coasts," Miles replied thoughtfully. Professionally, it's a lateral move with some unique advantages. But personally, he took her hand, his expression serious. Personally, it would mean being where you are. And that matters to me, Camille, a lot. Emotion welled in Camille's chest. It matters to me too. The thought of being in the same city, of seeing you regularly instead of through a screen. It's more than I dared hope for. I haven't accepted yet, Miles clarified. I wanted to talk to you first, make sure it wouldn't seem like, I don't know, too much pressure or moving too fast. Camille squeezed his hand. It's not too much. It's perfect. But only if it's right for you too. For your career, your goals. I don't want you to make sacrifices you might regret. That's what I love about you, Miles said softly. You always consider what's best for me, not just what you want. The word love hung in the air between them, neither acknowledging it directly but both feeling its weight and truth. When would you move? Camille asked after a moment. Not until May, after graduation, Miles explained. So we'd still have several months of long distance, but knowing there's an end date would make it easier, I think. Camille nodded, already imagining a future where Miles was part of her daily life in New York. May seems very far away right now, she admitted. Miles smiled, pulling her closer. Then we'll just have to make the most of every moment until then. Starting with this weekend. The 3 days they spent together were perfect in their simplicity. They visited the cliffside overlook where their story had begun, walked along the beach where Miles had first told her about his research, and spent an afternoon with Evelyn, who welcomed Camille as if she were already family. On Sunday evening, they drove down the coast to a small inn overlooking the ocean, spending the night in a room with a private balcony where they could hear the waves crashing on the shore below. Standing on that balcony under the stars, Miles wrapped his arms around Camille from behind, his chin resting on the top of her head. I love you, he said simply, the words falling naturally into the night air. I think I've loved you since that first night when you trusted me enough to let me see your tears. Camille turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. I love you too, Miles. You helped me find myself again, and in the process, I found you. The most unexpected, wonderful gift. Their kiss was tender at first, then deepening with the intensity of their feelings. When they finally broke apart, Miles rested his forehead against hers. We'll make this work, he promised. The distance, the time apart, all of it. Because what we have is worth fighting for. Yes, Camille agreed, her heart full. It is. Tuesday morning came too quickly. At the airport, they stood holding each other, reluctant to let go despite the final boarding call for Camille's flight. May feels like forever away, Camille said, echoing her words from days earlier. We'll make it work, Miles assured her, and I'll visit next month after my big presentation. We can start looking at neighborhoods where I might live. Or, Camille suggested hesitantly, you could live with me. My apartment is plenty big enough for two. Miles smiled, touching her cheek gently. Let's talk about that when I visit. No pressure, no rush. We have time to figure everything out. With one last kiss, Camille finally forced herself to turn toward the gate. This goodbye was even harder than the first, now that she knew exactly what she was leaving behind. Camille, Miles called when she was a few steps away. She turned back, questioning. I knew where to take you that first night, he said, his voice carrying to her across the crowded terminal. And I'll always know. Whenever you need it, whenever you forget, I'll know where to take you to help you remember. Tears pricked at Camille's eyes, but they were matched by a smile that came from deep within. I'm counting on it, she replied. As her plane lifted off the runway, Camille looked out the window at the city falling away beneath her. Unlike her departure 2 weeks earlier, this time she wasn't leaving with uncertainty or fear. She was leaving with love, with purpose, with the knowledge that what she and Miles had found together was rare and precious. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, distance, different worlds, competing priorities. But Camille touched the seashell at her throat and smiled. They would face those challenges together, two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way and recognized something worth holding on to. In a black town car on a difficult night, a kind driver had asked a simple question. Rough day. And in that moment something had begun. A journey back to herself, a path toward love, a future full of possibility. Miles had known where to take her. To the ocean that had once fixed her, to the peace she had thought was lost forever. And in helping her find herself a Gar-in, he had given her the greatest gift of all, the courage to choose her own path, to stand firm in her convictions, to love without fear. As New York came into view, Camille smiled. Her life was waiting, her business, her purpose, her newly strengthened relationship with her father. And in May, Miles would join her, bringing his warmth, his integrity, his unwavering support. The ocean would always be there, connecting them across the distance. And whenever she needed to remember, she had only to touch the seashell pendant and hear Miles's voice in her heart. You know where to find me, I'll be waiting. No matter what challenges lay ahead, Camille knew with absolute certainty that she had found something true and lasting, not just with Miles, but within herself. And that was the greatest journey of all, the end.